A single dad pulled a crying woman from a burning car, unaware she was the billionaire CEO who'd change his life forever. He thought it was just another day, another good deed. But the woman he rescued? She wasn't just lost, she was hiding. Hiding from a scandal, hiding from her past, and hiding from the world that tried to destroy her. He brought her into his home, into his quiet life. But the closer they got, the more secrets burned beneath the surface. Until the truth exploded on national television. Who is she really? And when the world turns against them, will love be enough to save them both? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The winter night wrapped around Jack Connolly's old pickup truck like a dark blanket. Snowflakes danced in his headlights as he drove along the winding rural road, his thoughts drifting between the visit with his old army buddy and the pile of repair jobs waiting for him tomorrow. In the rearview mirror, he caught glimpses of Mia in the back seat, her head bent over a book, using the dim light of her kid-safe reading lamp. "Getting tired back there, sweetheart?" Jack's deep voice was gentle, a contrast to his weathered appearance. Mia looked up, her bright eyes meeting his in the mirror. "No, Daddy, I'm at the good part." She held up her well-worn copy of Charlotte's Web, her third time reading it this year. Jack smiled, the kind of smile that touched his eyes but carried a hint of sadness. Mia's love of reading reminded him so much of Sarah, his late wife. "Just a few more chapters tonight, okay? It's getting late." "Okay." Mia's voice was soft, understanding beyond her 9 years. Mr. Tommy seemed sad today. Jack's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Tommy Delgado, his old army friend, wasn't doing well lately. The visit had been harder than usual. "Yeah, honey, sometimes the memories get heavy for old soldiers. Like they do for you sometimes?" Jack swallowed hard, amazed at how perceptive his daughter could be. "Something like that." The snow was falling faster now, fat flakes catching in the beam of his headlights. Jack slowed the truck, knowing these back roads could get treacherous quickly. The heater hummed, fighting against the cold that seemed to seep through every crack in the old vehicle. "Do you think it'll snow enough for school to close tomorrow?" Mia asked, hopefully, marking her place in her book. "Don't count on it," Jack chuckled. "Mrs. Peterson hasn't canceled school in 3 years, even during that big storm last winter." Mia sighed dramatically. "She probably lives at school. I bet she has a secret bedroom behind the library." The mental image made Jack laugh, a real laugh, the kind that had become rare since Sarah passed. These moments with Mia were his anchor, keeping him grounded when the world felt too heavy. The road curved ahead, bordered by thick woods on both sides. Jack's trained eyes scanned the darkness, always alert, a habit from his military days that he'd never shaken. The falling snow created an almost hypnotic effect, but he forced himself to focus on the road. "Hey, Dad?" Mia's voice had that tone she used when she was working up to asking something important. "Yeah? Can we stop by Mom's grave this weekend? I drew her a new picture at art class." Jack's chest tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "Of course we can, sweetheart. What did you draw?" "Our family. You and me. And Mom as an angel. Mrs. Roberts said it was beautiful." There was a pause. "Dad, do you think Mom can see us from heaven?" The question hung in the air, heavy with emotion. Jack opened his mouth to respond, but something caught his eye ahead. Headlights, moving too fast around the bend. A luxury SUV appeared, its tires losing grip on the snowy road. Jack watched in horror as the vehicle fishtailed, its driver obviously fighting for control. Time seemed to slow as the SUV spun, then left the road entirely, slamming into a large oak tree with a sickening crunch. "Oh my God," Jack breathed, already pulling over to the shoulder. In his rearview mirror, he saw flames beginning to lick at the SUV's hood. Without hesitation, he threw the truck into park. "Mia, stay in the car." His voice was firm but urgent as he unbuckled his seatbelt. "Lock the doors. Don't move unless I tell you to." "Daddy?" Mia's voice trembled with fear. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm going to help them. Just stay put." Jack was already opening his door, the cold air rushing in. "Promise me you'll stay in the car." "I promise," Mia whispered, clutching her book to her chest. Jack jumped out of the truck, his boots crunching in the fresh snow. The flames were growing larger, casting an orange glow across the white ground. He could hear someone crying inside the vehicle, and his military training kicked in. There wasn't much time before the whole thing could go up. He ran toward the burning SUV, his heart pounding, knowing every second counted. The crying was getting louder, a woman's voice filled with pain and fear. The same protective instinct that had driven him in combat, that motivated him as a father, propelled him forward into danger. Behind him, safe in the truck, he could feel Mia's eyes watching. His daughter, who had already lost one parent, was about to watch her father run toward a burning vehicle. But Jack Connolly had never been the type of man who could drive past someone in need. Sarah had loved that about him, even when it worried her. The heat from the flames hit his face as he approached the wreck. Through the smoke and fire, he could see a figure moving in the driver's seat, struggling with the jammed door. The hood of the SUV was completely engulfed now, and Jack knew they had seconds, not minutes. The fire's heat pressed against Jack's face as he reached the driver's side door. Through the cracked window, he saw a woman slumped over the steering wheel, moving weakly. Her expensive silk blouse was stained with blood from what looked like a head wound. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Jack shouted, tugging at the door handle. It wouldn't budge. The frame had buckled in the impact, sealing the door shut. The woman lifted her head slightly, revealing a face streaked with tears and blood. "Help," she whispered, her voice barely audible through the glass. "Please." Jack looked around frantically, searching for something to break the window. The flames were spreading faster now, licking at the edges of the hood. His eyes landed on a large rock near the base of the tree. Without hesitation, he grabbed it. "Cover your face," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of his military years. The woman weakly raised her arms to shield herself. Jack smashed the rock against the driver's window, the safety glass spider-webbed but held. He hit it again, harder, and this time the window shattered inward. Smoke immediately billowed out through the opening, making him cough. "I'm going to get you out," Jack said, reaching in through the broken window. The heat was intense now, and he could hear the ominous crackle of flames getting closer to the engine compartment. "Can you move?" The woman nodded vaguely, fumbling with her seatbelt. Her hands were shaking too badly to release it. Jack pulled out his pocket knife. He always carried one, another habit from his army days, and quickly cut through the strap. "Put your arms around my neck," he instructed, leaning further into the vehicle. The smoke was thickening, burning his eyes and throat. The woman did as he said, her movements slow and uncoordinated. Jack got his arms under her and pulled. The sound of metal groaning filled the air, a warning. Jack knew that sound from his time in combat. It meant things were about to get much worse. "Hold on tight," he said, and with one powerful movement, he lifted her through the window. Glass crunched under his boots as he stepped back, cradling her against his chest. She was lighter than he expected, despite her elegant clothes and jewelry. Jack turned and ran, his boots slipping slightly in the snow. Behind him, he heard a whoosh and felt a wave of heat as the SUV's fuel tank ignited. The explosion rocked the night, sending a fireball into the dark sky. The force of it nearly knocked him off his feet, but he managed to keep his balance, shielding the woman with his body. When he was sure they were at a safe distance, Jack carefully set the woman down in the snow. She was conscious but dazed, her expensive clothes torn and sooty. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead. "Daddy!" Mia's worried voice carried from the truck. "Stay there, Mia," Jack called back, keeping his voice steady to reassure her. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911, keeping one hand on the woman's shoulder to steady her as she swayed. 911. "What's your emergency?" "There's been a car accident on County Road 23, about 3 miles east of the Thompson Creek Bridge. Vehicle fire, 1 injured. Need ambulance and fire department." Jack's report was crisp and efficient, falling back on his military training. While he gave their location to the dispatcher, the woman grabbed his arm. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the smoke. "No press, no pictures. Please." Jack frowned but focused on finishing his call. After hanging up, he shrugged off his jacket and wrapped it around the shivering woman's shoulders. "Help's coming. Just try to stay still. You might have a concussion." "Eve," she said suddenly, her green eyes focusing on his face. "My name is Eve. Please, please don't tell anyone you found me here. I can't." She started coughing, harsh and deep. "Take it easy," Jack said, concerned by her obvious panic. "You're safe now. That's what matters." The woman, Eve, gripped his arm tighter. "Promise me. Promise you won't tell anyone who I am. No pictures, no social media, nothing. Please." There was real fear in her voice, something that went beyond the normal shock of an accident. The sound of distant sirens cut through the night air. Eve's eyes widened in alarm, and she tried to stand. Jack gently but firmly kept her seated. "You need to get checked out at the hospital," he said. "Whatever you're worried about can wait." The ambulance arrived first, its red lights painting the snowy scene in surreal colors. 2 EMTs jumped out, rushing toward them with their equipment. Eve pressed something into Jack's hand, a business card with just a phone number on it. "If you need to reach me," she whispered, "please keep it to yourself." The EMTs took over, checking Eve's vital signs and asking her questions. Jack stepped back, watching as they worked. He walked to his truck where Mia sat wide-eyed, her face pressed against the window. "It's okay, sweetheart," he said, opening the door. "The lady's going to be fine." "Is she hurt bad?" Mia asked, her voice small. "No, honey, just scared and a little banged up." Jack hugged her close, grateful for her warmth and solidity. They followed the ambulance to the small county hospital, Jack wanting to make sure Eve was truly okay. In the emergency room, she was quickly taken to an examination room, but not before casting one more pleading look at Jack. An hour later, a nurse led Jack back to Eve's room. She was sitting up in bed, her face cleaned of blood and soot, but her eyes still held that same haunted look. A bandage covered the cut on her forehead. "The doctor says I can leave soon," she said quietly. "They want to monitor me for a few more hours, but nothing's broken." She paused, twisting the hospital blanket in her hands. "I need to ask you again. Please don't tell anyone about tonight. Not my name, not my car, nothing. I can't have anyone know I was here." Jack studied her face, noting the fine lines of stress around her eyes, the way she held herself like someone used to being in control. Whatever her story was, her fear was real. "I won't say anything," he promised, "but are you sure you're safe? Is someone after you?" Eve managed a weak smile. "Nothing like that. I need to stay out of the public eye right now. Please understand." Jack nodded slowly. He understood wanting to keep things private. He'd been doing it himself since Sarah died. "All right, your secret's safe with me." "Thank you," Eve whispered, relief flooding her face. "For everything. Not just this, but—" She gestured vaguely at the bandage on her head. "Anyone would have done the same," Jack said, uncomfortable with gratitude. "No," Eve said firmly. "They wouldn't have. Trust me, I know." She looked like she wanted to say more, but instead pressed her lips together and looked away. The morning sun painted the kitchen in soft yellow light as Jack packed Mia's lunch. His hands still smelled faintly of smoke, despite scrubbing them twice. The events of last night felt almost dreamlike, but the business card with its single phone number sitting on his counter proved it had been real. "Daddy, can I have extra cookies today?" Mia asked, swinging her legs at the kitchen table while munching on her cereal. Jack glanced at his daughter, grateful for her innocent presence that kept him grounded. "Just one extra, kiddo, and make sure to eat your sandwich first." I know. Mia rolled her eyes but smiled. "Was that lady okay, the one from the car?" Jack zipped up the lunch bag, choosing his words carefully. "She's fine. The doctors took good care of her. She looked scared," Mia said thoughtfully, pushing her empty bowl away. like Mrs. Peterson's cat when it got stuck in that tree. Jack couldn't help but smile at the comparison. Sometimes grown-ups get scared too, honey. Come on, get your coat, we don't want to be late. The drive to Mia's elementary school was quiet, with fresh snow covering last night's tracks. Jack's old truck grumbled along the familiar route, while Mia hummed softly to herself, drawing pictures in the foggy window. At the school drop-off, Mia gave him an extra tight hug. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, sweetheart. Have a good day." Jack watched until she disappeared inside the building, her pink backpack bouncing with each step. Then he headed to his first job of the day, fixing Mrs. Henderson's leaky faucet. The morning passed in a blur of routine tasks. Jack's hands worked automatically, tightening pipes, replacing washers, patching drywall, while his mind kept drifting back to the accident. The way the flames had reflected off the snow, the terror in Eve's eyes when she begged him to keep quiet. Around noon he stopped at Pete's Hardware to pick up supplies. The store's bell jingled as he entered, and Pete looked up from his crossword puzzle. "Morning, Jack. Heard you had some excitement last night." Jack's shoulders tensed. "News travels fast. Small town." Pete shrugged. "Tommy at the fire station mentioned a car fire out on County Road 23. Said someone pulled the driver out just in time." "Yeah, well." Jack studied the selection of pipe fittings with unnecessary intensity. Right place, right time. Pete seemed to sense Jack's reluctance to discuss it. "Need anything special today?" "Just the usual." Jack gathered his supplies quickly, paying with cash from his morning's work. His next job was at the community center, fixing a stubborn door that wouldn't close properly. The familiar rhythms of work helped settle his mind, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had shifted in his carefully ordered world. Tommy Delgado wheeled himself over while Jack was working, his military-issue wheelchair squeaking slightly. "Heard you played hero last night," Tommy said without preamble. Jack continued adjusting the door hinge. "Not really." "Cut the modest crap, Connolly. You pulled someone from a burning vehicle. That's hero territory in my book." Tommy's voice carried the weight of someone who knew exactly what that meant. Jack straightened up, meeting his friend's eyes. "I did what needed doing, that's all. Like always." Tommy nodded approvingly. "The lady okay?" "Yeah," Jack said shortly, returning to his work. "She's fine." Tommy watched him work in silence for a moment. "You know, it's okay to let good things happen sometimes, Jack. Sarah would have wanted that." Jack's hand stilled on the screwdriver. "Tommy, I'm just saying." Tommy raised his hands in surrender. "Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it." Before Jack could respond, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out to find a message from a blocked number. "I can't stop thinking about what you did for me last night. Words aren't enough to express my gratitude. Would you meet me for coffee tomorrow? Somewhere private where we can talk? Eve." Jack stared at the message, aware of Tommy watching him curiously. After a long moment, he typed back, "There's a small coffee shop called Beans on Oak Street, usually quiet in the afternoons." The response came quickly. "Tomorrow at 2? I'll be there." "See you then," Jack replied, then tucked his phone away. "Good news?" Tommy asked, trying to sound casual. "Just work," Jack said, returning to the door. But he couldn't quite hide the slight uptick at the corner of his mouth. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly. Jack finished his remaining jobs, picked up Mia from school, and helped her with her homework. They had their usual dinner of spaghetti and meatballs, with Mia chattering about her day and the upcoming school play. Later, after Mia was tucked in bed, Jack sat at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee, looking at the business card and the text messages. He couldn't explain why he'd agreed to meet Eve. His life was complicated enough without getting involved in whatever situation she was hiding from. But something about her haunted eyes and genuine fear had touched him. Maybe it was because he recognized that look, the one that said, "You are carrying a weight too heavy to share." His phone buzzed one more time. "Thank you again for everything." Jack set the phone down without replying, but the warmth in his chest lingered as he headed to bed. The bell above Bean's door chimed softly as Jack entered, shaking snow from his boots. The cafe was nearly empty, just as he'd expected at this odd afternoon hour. The smell of coffee and fresh-baked muffins filled the warm air. He spotted Eve immediately. She sat in the farthest corner, partially hidden behind a large potted plant. Her elegant posture seemed at odds with her simple outfit: jeans, a gray sweater, and minimal makeup. Without the shock and terror of the accident clouding his perception, Jack noticed how her silver-streaked dark hair was pulled back in a casual bun, and how her hands fidgeted with a paper napkin. She looked up as he approached, relief flooding her features. "You came." "Said I would." Jack slid into the chair across from her, noting how she'd positioned herself to watch both the door and the window. Martha, the cafe owner, wandered over with her usual friendly smile. "Jack Connolly, twice in 1 month. What's the occasion? Just coffee today, Martha." He glanced at Eve's nearly empty cup. "Another for my friend?" Eve nodded gratefully. "Yes, please. And these muffins are wonderful. Family recipe," Martha beamed. "I'll bring you both fresh cups and a plate of blueberry ones, still warm from the oven." Once Martha had shuffled away, silence settled between them. Eve studied Jack with careful eyes, as if trying to solve a puzzle. "How's your daughter?" she finally asked. "Mia, right? I remember hearing you call her name that night." "She's good. Worried about you, actually." Jack's mouth quirked slightly. "Said you reminded her of our neighbor's scared cat." Eve laughed softly, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "Smart girl. I probably did look quite a fright." Martha returned with their coffee and muffins, then busied herself behind the counter, giving them privacy. Jack added a splash of cream to his cup while Eve wrapped her hands around hers, as if seeking warmth. "I owe you an explanation," Eve said quietly. "You don't owe me anything. I do." She took a deep breath. I'm not who people think I am. That night, I was running away. From expectations, from responsibilities, from... She trailed off, staring into her coffee. Jack waited, letting the silence give her space to find her words. "Have you ever felt like you're living someone else's life?" she asked suddenly. "Like you've built this structure around yourself, and one day you wake up and realize you can't breathe inside it anymore?" Jack thought of his own carefully constructed routines, the walls he'd built after Sarah died. "Yeah, I might know something about that." Eve's eyes met his, recognition flickering between them. "That night, I just drove. No destination, just needed to escape. Then the snow, and that turn." She shuddered slightly. "I should have died in that car, but you didn't. Because of you." She reached into her purse, pulling out an envelope. "I know money can't properly express my gratitude, but please." Jack held up his hand, stopping her. "No, but I didn't help you for money." His voice was firm but gentle. "Keep it." Eve set the envelope down, studying him with newfound curiosity. "You're an unusual man, Jack Connolly." "Nothing unusual about basic decency." "In my world, there is." A hint of bitterness crept into her voice. "Everything has a price tag. Every kindness comes with strings attached." "Sounds lonely," Jack said simply. Eve blinked rapidly, caught off guard by his directness. "It is." She picked up a muffin, breaking it into small pieces without eating any. "I used to know who I was, what I wanted. Now I feel lost." "Lost isn't always bad," Jack offered, surprising himself. "Sometimes you have to get lost to find your way back to yourself." A genuine smile touched Eve's lips, warming her entire face. "Is that wisdom from your military days?" "Nah, just something my sister Cora likes to say. She's the wise one in the family." "And what do you say?" Jack considered this, taking a sip of coffee. "I'd say, being lost means you're looking for something. That's better than being stuck." Eve's smile deepened, reaching her eyes. "You're wiser than you give yourself credit for, Jack." A comfortable silence fell between them as they shared the muffins. Through the window, snow had started falling again, fat flakes drifting past the glass. The cafe's warmth felt like a cocoon, separating them from the world outside. "I should go," Eve said eventually, though she made no move to leave. "I've taken up enough of your time." "It's my time to give." Jack surprised himself again with the gentle response. She reached for the envelope one more time. "Please, at least let me—" "No." Jack's voice was kind but absolute. "You want to thank me? Use it to help someone else who's lost." Eve stared at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. The carefully maintained distance in her eyes softened, replaced by something warmer, more genuine. "You're a good man, Jack Connolly." She stood up, gathering her things. Then, impulsively, she leaned down and kissed his cheek. "Thank you. For everything." Jack felt the warmth of her lips linger on his skin as she walked away, the bell chiming softly as she slipped out into the snow. Through the window, he watched her pull her coat closer and disappear down the street, leaving nothing but footprints that were already beginning to fill with fresh snow. Martha appeared at his elbow, refilling his coffee without asking. "She seems nice." "Yeah," Jack said softly, touching his cheek where Eve had kissed him. "She does." Eve became a familiar sight around Millbrook over the next few days. She moved through town like a quiet shadow, dressed in simple sweaters and jeans that somehow still looked expensive. The local shops began to expect her gentle presence, though no one quite knew what to make of this elegant stranger who introduced herself only as Eve. At Millbrook Library, she spent hours in the children's section, organizing books and reading to the little ones during story time. Mrs. Peterson, the head librarian, couldn't stop praising the mysterious woman's way with children. "Such lovely diction," Mrs. Peterson told anyone who would listen, "and she knows all the voices for each character." The kids were drawn to Eve like moths to a flame, especially during her dramatic reading of Where the Wild Things Are. She acted out all the parts, making the children squeal with delight at her monster growls. Jack noticed her there one afternoon while picking up Mia. He paused in the doorway, watching Eve gesture animatedly as she read, her face alive with joy. Mia tugged at his sleeve, whispering, "That's the lady from the accident, Daddy. Can we stay and listen?" They stayed for the end of story time, Eve's eyes meeting Jack's briefly over the heads of the children. Her smile grew warmer, more genuine. At Wilson's hardware store, Eve appeared on a quiet Tuesday morning. Jack was picking up supplies for a repair job when he spotted her examining paint swatches with intense concentration. "The green ones all look the same to me," he said, coming up beside her. Eve jumped slightly, then laughed. "I've been staring at them for 20 minutes, and I still can't decide between Sage Meadow and Forest Whisper. They're both gray," Jack teased. "They most certainly are not." But her eyes sparkled with amusement. "I'm thinking of repainting my rental cottage. The beige is depressing. Didn't know you were staying in town." "Neither did I, at first." Eve selected a paint swatch, tucking it into her pocket. "But it's growing on me." At Sweet Things Bakery, she developed a routine of arriving just as the morning rush ended. Sarah, the owner's teenage daughter, said Eve always ordered the same thing, one black coffee and a slice of apple pie. "She sits by the window and watches people go by," Sarah told Jack when he stopped in for his usual coffee. "Sometimes she writes in this fancy leather notebook. Mom says she looks sad, but in a pretty way, you know." Jack did know. He'd noticed the hint of melancholy that lingered behind Eve's smile, like a shadow you couldn't quite shake. The whole town buzzed with speculation about the mysterious woman. Some thought she was a writer researching a book. Others suggested she was hiding from an abusive ex-husband. The more dramatic theories involved witness protection or corporate espionage. Jack heard the rumors but kept his distance, respecting Eve's privacy. Still, he found himself looking for her when he drove through town, noting the graceful way she moved through spaces as if trying not to disturb the air around her. Their paths crossed again at Miller's Grocery on a Thursday afternoon. Jack was loading bags into his truck when he heard the distinctive sound of paper bags tearing. Eve stood in the parking lot, groceries scattered around her feet as she stared at the broken bags in dismay. Without hesitation, Jack jogged over to help. "Here, let me," he said, already gathering loose apples that had rolled toward a storm drain. "Oh, Jack, Eve flushed slightly. "I thought I could carry it all in one trip. Everyone always thinks that." He smiled, scooping up more items. "Where's your car?" "I walked, actually. The cottage isn't far." Jack looked at the quantity of groceries, then at the threatening sky. "Storm's coming. Let me give you a ride." Eve hesitated, but a distant rumble of thunder made up her mind. "Thank you. I'd appreciate that." They loaded her groceries into his truck, their hands brushing occasionally as they worked. Jack noticed she'd bought ingredients for actual cooking, fresh vegetables, herbs, pasta, not just the pre-made meals most temporary residents relied on. "You cook?" he asked as they climbed into the cab. "I love cooking." Eve settled into the passenger seat, smoothing her jeans. "It's meditative. When everything else feels chaotic, following a recipe makes sense." Jack thought about his own simple meals, more about necessity than enjoyment. Mia lives on mac and cheese and chicken nuggets these days. Every child's dream diet. Eve smiled, then added hesitantly, "I make a pretty good homemade mac and cheese, with 3 kinds of cheese and a crispy breadcrumb topping." The words slipped out before Jack could second-guess them. "Would you like to make it for us sometime?" Eve turned to look at him, surprise and something softer in her expression. "Are you inviting me to dinner, Jack Connolly?" "Guess I am." He kept his eyes on the road, suddenly uncertain. "If you want, no pressure. Just, Mia would love it. She talks about you after story time." "She's a wonderful girl." Eve was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I'd like that very much. To cook for you both." "Tomorrow?" Jack suggested, trying to sound casual. "Around 6? "Tomorrow at 6. Eve's voice held a warmth that had nothing to do with the temperature. "I'll bring everything we need." They rode in comfortable silence until Jack pulled up to a small cottage at the edge of town. It was a simple place with a wraparound porch and white shutters that needed painting. Somehow, he wasn't surprised Eve had chosen it over the fancier bed and breakfasts in town. They unloaded the groceries together, carrying them up to her porch just as the first fat raindrops began to fall. Eve unlocked the door but paused before going in. "Thank you," she said, "for the ride, and for asking me to dinner. Thank you for saying yes." Their eyes met, and for a moment the air felt charged with unspoken possibilities. Then a loud crack of thunder made them both jump, breaking the spell. "Tomorrow at 6, Eve confirmed, backing through her doorway. "Tomorrow at 6, Jack echoed, already heading back to his truck through the intensifying rain. He drove home with the wipers going full speed, thinking about Eve's smile and how tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. When he picked up Mia from school, he told her about their dinner guest. Mia's whole face lit up. "The storytime lady? Really? Can I show her my drawings? Can we have ice cream for dessert? Can I—" "Whoa, slow down," Jack laughed. "Let's start with dinner and see how it goes." But watching his daughter's excitement, Jack felt a flutter of anticipation in his own chest. Tomorrow at 6 couldn't come soon enough. The aroma of melting cheese and toasted breadcrumbs filled Jack's modest kitchen. Eve moved with practiced grace, stirring the bubbling sauce while Mia perched on a nearby stool, watching in fascination. "Can I smell the spices again?" Mia asked, leaning forward. Eve held out the small jar of nutmeg. "This is the secret ingredient. Just a tiny pinch makes everything taste magical." Mia took a careful sniff and grinned. "It smells like Christmas." Jack watched from the doorway, taking in the scene. Eve wore a simple blue sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back in a loose knot. She'd arrived exactly at 6, arms full of grocery bags, and had immediately put Mia at ease with her warm smile and gentle questions. "The table's set," Jack said, stepping into the kitchen. "Need any help?" "We've got it covered, right, Mia?" Eve winked at the little girl. My sous chef here has been invaluable. I helped grate the cheese, Mia announced proudly. 3 kinds, just like you said. The kitchen felt different with Eve in it. Warmer somehow, more alive. Usually, dinner was a rushed affair of microwaved meals or simple sandwiches. But tonight, the space hummed with conversation and laughter. Eve pulled the bubbling casserole from the oven, the top golden brown and crispy. Dinner is served. They gathered around the small kitchen table where Jack had set out his best plates, which weren't much, but Eve didn't seem to mind. Mia bounced in her seat as Eve served her a generous portion. Careful, it's hot, Eve cautioned, but her eyes sparkled at Mia's enthusiasm. The first bite brought appreciative sounds from both Jack and Mia. The mac and cheese was creamy and rich, nothing like the boxed version they were used to. This is amazing, Mia declared, cheese sauce dotting her chin. Can you teach Daddy how to make it? I'd be happy to share the recipe, Eve said, passing Jack a napkin for Mia's face. It was my grandmother's. Did she teach you how to cook? Mia asked between bites. A shadow passed briefly over Eve's face. She did. Some of my best memories are from her kitchen. I used to cook with my mom, Mia said quietly, pushing her food around, before she got sick. Jack tensed, but Eve handled the moment with gentle grace. I bet those are wonderful memories. Would you like to tell me about them? Mia nodded, her face brightening. She let me decorate cookies at Christmas. Mine were always messy, but she said they were perfect because they were made with love. Your mom sounds very wise, Eve said softly. Love makes everything better. After dinner, Mia tugged Eve's hand. Want to see my art room? Daddy turned the spare room into a studio for me. I'd love to, Eve replied, following Mia down the hallway. The small room was cluttered with art supplies, drawings covering every wall. Mia's creative space was a riot of color and imagination. Eve took it all in, genuine interest showing on her face as Mia explained each picture. This is our house, and that's Daddy fixing Mr. Wilson's roof, Mia pointed. And this is Princess, the cat that visits our porch sometimes. These are wonderful, Mia, Eve said, studying a particularly detailed drawing of the town square. You have a real gift for capturing details. Mia beamed at the praise. Then she pulled out a fresh drawing from her desk. I made this today. It's you, reading at the library. Eve carefully took the paper, her breath catching. The drawing showed her surrounded by children, a book in her hands, and a warm smile on her face. Despite its childish style, there was something touching about how Mia had captured her. Thank you, Mia, Eve whispered, blinking rapidly. This is the nicest gift anyone's given me in a long time. You can keep it, Mia said. Then, with the direct honesty of children, she asked, Are you sad sometimes? You look sad when you think nobody's watching. Jack, who had been standing in the doorway, started to intervene, but Eve gave him a small shake of her head. Everyone gets sad sometimes, she answered honestly. But being here, having dinner with you and your dad, that makes me happy. Mia nodded sagely. Daddy gets sad too, but he smiles more when you're around. Jack cleared his throat. Okay, Miss Artist, time to get ready for bed. But, Dad, no buts. School tomorrow. Mia sighed dramatically but hugged Eve tight. Will you come back and cook with us again? If your dad doesn't mind, Eve said, looking at Jack. Anytime, he replied softly. After Mia was tucked in, Jack led Eve to the front porch. The evening air was cool but not uncomfortable. They sat on the old wooden swing, listening to the crickets and distant train whistle. Thank you for dinner, Jack said. It's been a while since we had a real home-cooked meal. Thank you for inviting me. Your daughter is remarkable. She is. Jack was quiet for a moment. Sarah, my wife, she used to say Mia came into the world with an old soul. Eve turned toward him, waiting patiently as he gathered his thoughts. The cancer came fast, he continued, his voice low. One day Sarah was planning Mia's birthday party. The next, she was in the hospital. 6 months later, he trailed off, looking out into the darkness. Eve's hand found his on the swing between them, her touch gentle and grounding. Mia was only 6, Jack said. She still asks questions about her mom, wants to remember everything. Some days it's harder than others, but we get through. You've given her a beautiful life, Eve said softly. Anyone can see how secure and loved she feels. I worry it's not enough, that she needs more than just her sad old dad. Jack. Eve's voice was firm but gentle. Look at her artwork, listen to her laugh. That little girl is flourishing because of you. Being a single parent isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. And you're very present. They sat in comfortable silence, the porch swing creaking softly. Eve's hand remained on his, a warm anchor in the cool night air. The morning sun sparkled on the lake's surface as Jack and Eve walked along the well-worn trail. Fall leaves crunched under their boots, and a cool breeze carried the scent of pine and damp earth. Jack had suggested this spot, a quiet place where he often came to think. "This is beautiful," Eve said, pausing to take in the view. She wore simple hiking clothes, well-made but not flashy, and carried herself differently out here, more relaxed than he'd seen her before. "Mia and I come here to skip stones sometimes," Jack said, leading them to a fallen log that served as a natural bench. "It's peaceful." Eve sat beside him, watching a pair of ducks glide across the water. "Peaceful is exactly what I need right now." Jack waited, sensing she had more to say. He'd noticed the tired edges around her eyes, despite her warm smile. "Do you ever feel like you've lost your way?" Eve asked suddenly, picking up a smooth stone and turning it over in her hands. "Like somewhere along the line, you took a wrong turn, and now you're just going through the motions?" "After Sarah died," Jack admitted, "I felt like that for a long time, just getting through each day, doing what needed to be done." "What changed?" "Mia." Jack smiled slightly. "She needed more than just a functioning dad. She needed me present, really present. It made me look at things differently." Eve tossed the stone into the lake, watching the ripples spread. "I used to know exactly who I was and what I wanted. My work was my purpose, or at least I thought it was. Now," she trailed off, shaking her head. "What changed for you?" Jack asked gently. "Everything got so big, so complicated." Eve's shoulders tensed. "Decisions that used to be clear became murky. People I trusted." She stopped herself, taking a deep breath. "Sorry, I'm being cryptic." "You don't have to explain," Jack assured her. "Sometimes just saying it out loud helps." Eve turned to look at him, her eyes searching his face. "You make it easy to talk, you know that? You don't push, you don't judge, you just listen." Jack shrugged, slightly embarrassed by the praise. "Army training. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is just be there." "The world needs more of that," Eve said softly. "More listening, less rushing to fix everything." They walked further along the trail, coming to a clearing where wildflowers still bloomed despite the advancing autumn. Eve stopped to examine a patch of purple asters. "These remind me of my mother's garden," she said, touching a delicate petal. "She could make anything grow. I used to help her on weekends, learning the names of everything, watching how carefully she tended each plant." "You don't talk about her much," Jack observed. "She died when I was in college." Eve straightened up, brushing dirt from her hands. "Cancer, like your Sarah, it changed everything. I threw myself into work after that, building something bigger than myself, thinking that's what would make her proud. And now? Now I wonder if I've been running from something instead of toward it." Eve's voice wavered slightly. "All these years of pushing harder, climbing higher, what if I was just trying to outrun the quiet moments when I had to face myself?" Jack understood that feeling all too well. Sometimes the quiet moments are exactly what we need, even if they're the hardest to face. They reached a rocky outcrop overlooking the lake. Eve sat down, pulling her knees to her chest like a young girl. "I feel more real here than I have in years. No pressure, no expectations, just me." "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," Jack said, settling beside her. "It's terrifying," Eve admitted with a small laugh, "but also freeing." They sat in comfortable silence, watching a hawk circle lazily overhead. Jack noticed how Eve's shoulders had gradually relaxed, how her breathing had slowed to match the rhythm of the gentle waves below. "Thank you for bringing me here," she said eventually. "I needed this more than I realized." "Any time," Jack replied simply. The walk back was easier, filled with lighter conversation about Mia's latest art projects and Jack's most interesting handyman adventures. Eve laughed at his story about fixing Mrs. Peterson's supposedly haunted bathroom faucet, which turned out to be just loose pipes making spooky noises. When they reached the parking lot, Eve checked her phone for the first time since they'd started hiking. Her expression shifted slightly as she read something on the screen. "I should get going," she said, tucking the phone away. "Work never really stops, does it?" "Let me drive you back," Jack offered, opening his truck's passenger door. The drive into town was quiet but comfortable. Eve hummed softly along with the radio, some old country song about finding your way home. When they reached the address she'd given him, a small bed and breakfast on the outskirts of town, Jack noticed a sleek black town car waiting in the parking lot. Eve seemed to hesitate for a moment before gathering her things. "Thanks again for today, Jack. It meant a lot." "Take care of yourself, Eve," he said sincerely. He watched as she walked to the waiting car, her posture straightening subtly with each step. The driver opened the door, and Eve slipped inside with practiced ease. As the car pulled away, Jack felt a flutter of curiosity about who Eve really was, but he pushed it aside. Everyone had their stories, their reasons for keeping parts of themselves hidden. He, of all people, understood that. The autumn morning started like any other in town. Jack was fixing old Mr. Henderson's fence when he heard the first rumble of news vans rolling down Main Street. The sight was unusual enough to make him pause, hammer mid-swing. 3 large white vans with satellite dishes mounted on top parked near the town square. Camera crews spilled out, their equipment glinting in the morning sun. Jack watched as reporters in pressed suits started setting up for live broadcasts. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Cora, his sister. "Turn on the news right now." Before he could respond, Mrs. Henderson hurried out of her house, still wearing her apron. Jack, you need to see this." She waved him inside urgently. Jack followed her, wiping his hands on his work jeans. In her living room, the TV was blaring. A polished news anchor stood in front of a familiar corporate logo, Hartwell Living Inc. Breaking news in the ongoing saga of Evelyn Hartwell, the reclusive billionaire CEO who disappeared from public view following allegations of corporate fraud at her company 3 months ago, the anchor announced. Sources confirm Ms. Hartwell has been living incognito in the small Midwest town of... The camera cut to footage of Evelyn, walking down their town's main street. The footage was grainy, clearly taken from someone's phone, but it was unmistakably her. Jack's stomach dropped. "Where she's reportedly been seen frequently in the company of a local handyman," the anchor continued. The next image made Jack's hands clench, a distant shot of him and Eve sitting on his porch from just days ago. Mrs. Henderson turned to him, her eyes wide. "Jack, that's you, with Evelyn Hartwell, the Evelyn Hartwell." Jack barely heard her. His mind was racing through every conversation, every moment they'd shared. The quiet cafe meetings, the hiking trail, the way she'd tensed up when talking about trust and complications. It all made sense now. His phone started ringing. Unknown numbers, text messages flooded in. Jack stepped outside, needing air, but the scene on Main Street had transformed. More news vans were arriving. People gathered in clusters, pointing and talking excitedly. Tommy Delgado wheeled up to him from across the street. "Brother, you're about to be famous. Or infamous. They're saying she was hiding out here after that big scandal. Something about millions of dollars missing from company accounts." "That's not," Jack started, but he realized he didn't know what to say. He didn't actually know anything about Evelyn, or what she was running from. More locals were staring now. Jack could feel their eyes, hear their whispers. Some looked concerned, others accusatory. A group of women outside the diner were shaking their heads, one of them saying loudly, Always knew there was something off about her, too polished for our little town. Jack's phone buzzed again. This time it was from the school, Mia's teacher. "Mr. Connolly, there are reporters asking questions at the school. Perhaps you should pick up Mia early today." His heart rate spiked. He headed for his truck, but a reporter intercepted him, a microphone thrust forward. "Sir, are you Jack Connolly? Can you comment on your relationship with Evelyn Hartwell? Did you know who she really was?" "No comment," Jack managed, pushing past. More reporters appeared, calling questions. "How long have you known Ms. Hartwell? Were you aware of the fraud allegations? Is it true she's been funding local projects through shell companies?" Jack got into his truck, slamming the door on their voices. His hands shook slightly as he started the engine. He tried calling Eve's number, the only one she'd given him, straight to voicemail. At the school, Mia was waiting in the office, looking confused and scared. "Daddy, why are there TV people outside?" They were asking about Miss Eve. "It's complicated, sweetheart," Jack said, leading her quickly to the truck. "We'll talk about it at home." But home offered no refuge. 2 news vans were already parked across the street. Neighbors stood in their yards, watching. Jack hurried Mia inside, closing the blinds. Cora arrived minutes later, letting herself in through the back door. "I tried to call you. This is all over every channel." She turned on the TV, where Evelyn's corporate headshot filled the screen beside headlines about her secret small-town hideaway. 3 months ago, Hartwell Living Inc. was rocked by allegations of massive financial misconduct, a different reporter explained. While Ms. Hartwell herself was cleared of direct involvement, questions remained about her oversight. She stepped back from day-to-day operations and hadn't been seen in public until now. "Turn it off," Jack said quietly. Mia was watching, her eyes wide. "But Miss Eve is nice," Mia protested. "She listens to my stories and doesn't act like a billionaire at all." "That's because she was pretending, honey," Jack said, the words tasting bitter. "She wasn't being honest with us." "Or maybe she was being more honest here than anywhere else," Cora suggested gently. "You should talk to her, Jack." He tried calling again. Still no answer. His phone chimed with a news alert. "Hartwell Living Board calls emergency meeting amid CEO's public reappearance." The gossip spread through town like wildfire. At the diner, people whispered about secret deals and hidden agendas. At the hardware store, old-timers speculated about what a billionaire would want with their small town. Someone mentioned how she'd been asking questions about local businesses, properties for sale. "Probably planning some big development, Mr. Wilson declared at the counter, using poor Jack here to get the inside scoop on what's available. These rich types, they're always working some angle. Jack wanted to defend her, but doubt had crept in. Why hadn't she trusted him with the truth? What else hadn't she told him? By evening, the story had grown. Social media exploded with grainy photos and wild theories. Some claimed she'd been orchestrating a corporate takeover from hiding. Others suggested she was scouting locations for a reality show. Through it all, Evelyn, remained silent. No calls, no messages, no explanations. Jack sat on his porch after Mia went to bed, staring at his phone. The same porch where they'd shared quiet conversations, where she'd seemed so real, so genuine. Now those memories felt tainted, colored by questions and doubts. A light rain began to fall, driving the news vans away temporarily. In the sudden quiet, Jack scrolled through older news stories about Evelyn Hartwell. Photos showed her in elegant business suits, addressing shareholders, cutting ribbons at store openings. She looked like a stranger, polished, powerful, untouchable. Yet he could still see Eve in there somewhere, in the slight sadness around her eyes, the careful way she held herself apart from others. He thought about what she'd said on their hike. "I feel more real here than I have in years." Had any of it been real? His phone lit up with another call, unknown number. For a moment, his heart jumped, thinking it might be her. But it was just another reporter, wanting a statement about the mysterious billionaire and the small-town handyman who'd caught her attention. Jack declined the call, watching the rain fall. Trust, once broken, left jagged edges that cut deep. He'd learned that lesson before, and now here he was, bleeding again. The Veterans Center was usually Jack's sanctuary, a place where titles and status didn't matter. But today, the familiar warmth felt different. Conversations stopped when he walked in. Eyes followed him across the room. Tommy Delgado sat at his usual spot by the coffee machine, his wheelchair angled toward the door like he'd been waiting. "Hey, brother," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Quite a storm you've kicked up." "Not now, Tommy," Jack muttered, heading for the supply closet. He had repairs to finish, doorknobs to replace, work that made sense. "People are talking, Jack," Tommy wheeled after him, "saying you knew all along, that you've been helping her scout properties for some big development deal." Jack's hand tightened on his toolbox. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Bernie Mitchell's voice cut in. The older veteran stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "She shows up out of nowhere, gets close to our most trusted volunteer, starts asking questions about local businesses." "It wasn't like that," Jack said, but Bernie wasn't finished. "Then, there's the timing. Right after that scandal at her company, billions in pension funds, Jack, working people's retirement savings, gone." Bernie's face was red with anger. "And you brought her right into our community." "I didn't bring her anywhere," Jack snapped. "I pulled her from a burning car, that's all. And she just happened to stick around?" Another veteran chimed in. "Come on, Jack. Nobody's that naive." The accusations hit harder, coming from men he respected, men he'd worked alongside for years. Jack set his toolbox down with deliberate care, trying to keep his voice steady. "You think I planned this? That I somehow orchestrated a car crash to meet a billionaire?" "We think you saw an opportunity," Bernie said. "Can't blame you, really. Single dad, struggling to make ends meet." Jack's control snapped. "Careful, Bernie." Tommy wheeled between them. "Hey, let's all take a breath here." "No," Jack said. "Let them talk. Apparently everyone knows exactly what I was thinking, what I was planning. Never mind that I've spent 5 years volunteering here, helping rebuild this place. Never mind that I've known most of you since Mary died," Bernie finished softly. "That's why this hurts, Jack. We were there for you then. We trusted you." The mention of his late wife felt like a physical blow. Jack stepped back, his voice rough. "You don't know anything about me and Eve." "Evelyn," Bernie corrected. "Evelyn Hartwell. Even her name was a lie. She gave me her first name. That's all." "And you never wondered why? Never got curious about the fancy car that picked her up? The way she could suddenly appear in town without any visible means of support?" Jack had wondered. Of course he had. But he'd respected her privacy, thinking she'd tell him when she was ready. Now he felt foolish for that trust. "The Jack I know wouldn't let himself be used like this," Bernie continued. "Wouldn't let his daughter get caught up in—" "Leave Mia out of this," Jack warned, his voice dangerous. "She's already in it. Her picture's all over the internet. Billionaire CEO plays house with small-town family. Is that what you wanted?" Other veterans were gathering now, drawn by the raised voices. Some looked sympathetic, others disappointed. Jack had helped many of them, fixing their homes, driving them to appointments, listening to their stories. Now they looked at him like a stranger. "I'm done here," Jack said, picking up his toolbox. "Jack, wait," Tommy called. "We're just worried about you, man, about what happens when she leaves. Because she will leave. People like her always do." The words followed Jack out into the parking lot. He sat in his truck for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. Then he started the engine and headed for the lake road. He knew where she was staying, a secluded rental cabin outside town. He'd picked up enough hints during their conversations, though she'd never directly told him. Like so many things she'd never directly told him. The cabin sat back from the road, sheltered by pine trees. A black SUV with tinted windows was parked out front. Security, probably. Jack pulled up beside it, not caring if they reported his presence. He knocked hard on the door. No answer. "Eve," he called. Then, deliberately, "Evelyn!" The door opened. She stood there in casual clothes, jeans and a sweater, looking more like Eve than Evelyn. But her eyes were red-rimmed, her composed mask cracking. "Jack," she said softly, "I've been trying to find the right words." "Were any of your words true?" he demanded, stepping past her into the cabin. "Was any of it real?" "All of it was real." Her voice broke. "That's why I couldn't." "Couldn't what? Tell me the truth? Trust me with your precious secret?" The hurt spilled out as anger. "Did you think I'd sell you out? Run to the papers?" "No, I knew you wouldn't. That's what made it worse." She wrapped her arms around herself. "You were so honest, so genuine. The more I got to know you, the harder it became to tell you." "So, you just let me look like a fool instead? Let the whole town think I was part of some scheme?" "I never meant." She stopped, tears spilling over. "I was hiding, Jack, but I wasn't lying. Not about the important things. Not about how I felt. How do I know that's true? How do I know anything about you?" "Because I'm the same person who sat on your porch and talked about stars," she said desperately. "The same person who listened to Mia's stories and helped you stack firewood. Money doesn't change who I am inside." "But lies do," Jack said quietly. "Lies change everything." Evelyn sank onto the couch, her shoulders shaking. I know I hurt you and Mia and this whole town. I was drowning in that other life. In the scandal, the accusations, the constant scrutiny. And then you pulled me from that car, and you looked at me like I was just a person, just Eve." Her pain was raw, real. Jack wanted to comfort her, but the wall of broken trust stood between them. "You could have told me," he said, "after that first coffee, after we started, whatever this was. I would have understood." "Would you?" She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Would you have treated me the same, talked to me the same, if you'd known who I was from the beginning?" The question hit home. Jack remembered how natural it had felt with Eve, their conversations, their silences, the way she fit into his simple life. Would he have let himself feel that comfortable with Evelyn Hartwell, billionaire CEO? "I deserve the chance to decide that for myself," he said finally. "You're right." She wiped her eyes. "I was a coward. I got so caught up in feeling normal, feeling free, that I convinced myself the truth didn't matter. But it did. It does. And I'm so sorry, Jack." The next few weeks passed in a blur of awkward encounters and painful silences. Jack threw himself into his work, taking on extra repair jobs and spending longer hours at the Veterans Center. He'd see Evelyn's black SUV around town occasionally, but he always found somewhere else to be. The whispers continued, though they changed tone. People noticed anonymous donations appearing, new books for the school library, repairs to the community center's heating system, winter coats for kids who needed them. No fanfare, no press releases, just quiet help where it was needed most. "It's her, isn't it?" Cora asked one evening, watching Jack fix her kitchen sink. "These mysterious donations?" Jack grunted, focusing on the pipe. "Wouldn't know." "Come on, brother." Cora leaned against the counter. "I saw her at the grocery store yesterday. She looked miserable. Not my problem." "She's trying, Jack, in her own way." He emerged from under the sink, wiping his hands on a rag. "By throwing money around? That's exactly what everyone accused her of doing." "No," Cora said patiently. "By helping without taking credit. By showing she cares about this community. Not just me." Jack's laugh was bitter. "Trust me, she doesn't care about me. I was just her small-town escape fantasy." "Is that really what you believe?" Before Jack could answer, his phone buzzed. A text from Mia's teacher, his daughter, had forgotten her lunch again. He sighed, gathering his tools. "I've got to run to the school." "Jack," Cora caught his arm, "don't let pride steal something good from your life." Again. He shrugged her off, heading for his truck. The school was quiet when he arrived, students in their classrooms. He signed in at the office and walked the familiar path to Mia's classroom, lunch bag in hand. Voices drifted from the library as he passed. One of them made him stop. And then, what happened to the lonely star? It was Evelyn's voice, warm and animated. It found its family. Several young voices answered in unison. Jack peered through the library window. Evelyn sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by first graders. She held a picture book, but her eyes were on the children as she told the story from memory. She looked different, wearing simple clothes, her hair pulled back, no trace of the polished CEO. She looked like Eve again. "That's right," she said, smiling. "Because sometimes the best families are the ones we choose, not the ones we're born into." Jack backed away before she could spot him, continuing to Mia's classroom. His daughter's face lit up when he delivered her lunch, but there was something hesitant in her expression. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" he asked. "Yeah," Mia fiddled with her sandwich. "Dad, is Miss Eve still our friend?" The question caught him off guard. "It's complicated, honey." "Why? Because she has lots of money now? She's still nice." "It's not about the money. It's about trust. About being honest with people." Mia considered this. "Like when I broke your coffee mug and didn't tell you?" Despite himself, Jack smiled. "Something like that. But you forgave me when I said sorry. And you said everybody makes mistakes. Out of the mouths of babes, as his mother used to say." Jack kissed the top of Mia's head. "Eat your lunch, kiddo." The following week, Jack was replacing shingles on Mrs. Peterson's roof when he heard familiar voices below. He peered over the edge to see Mia and Evelyn on the sidewalk. His daughter must have run into her walking home from school. "Will you come to story night?" Mia was asking. "I'm reading my own story this time." "Oh, honey, I don't know if that's a good idea." "Please? You can come just as Eve. That's who you really are anyway, right?" Jack watched Evelyn kneel to Mia's level, her expression soft. "Your dad might not want me there. He misses you. He doesn't say it, but I can tell." Mia's voice dropped to a stage whisper. "He looks at your coffee mug every morning." "Mia!" Evelyn's voice cracked. "Just think about it. It's next Thursday at 7. I wrote about a princess who pretends to be a normal girl because she's scared people only like her crown. But then she meets a knight who likes her just for her." Evelyn laughed wetly. "That sounds like a wonderful story." "It's kind of about you," Mia admitted. "But don't tell my dad." Jack sat back on the roof, his throat tight. He listened to them say goodbye, to Mia's skipping footsteps heading home. When he looked down again, Evelyn still stood there, staring at his house down the street. She reached up to wipe her eyes, then squared her shoulders and walked away. No security detail, no fancy car. Just a woman carrying the weight of her mistakes and trying to find her way back to something real. Jack thought about Cora's words about pride, about Mia's simple wisdom regarding forgiveness, about the way Evelyn had looked, sitting on the library floor, sharing stories with children who didn't care about her bank account or her corporate title. Maybe the truth wasn't as simple as lies versus honesty. Maybe sometimes people hid because they were afraid of losing the very thing they most wanted to keep. He picked up his hammer and returned to work, but his mind kept drifting to next Thursday's story night and to a princess who just wanted to be seen for herself. Jack arrived early to story night, slipping into the back row of the school auditorium. Parents and children filtered in, filling the rows with excited chatter. He spotted Tommy Delgado in his wheelchair near the front, surrounded by his usual group of veteran buddies who never missed these community events. The lights dimmed slightly, and Mrs. Patterson, the librarian, stepped up to the microphone. "Welcome, everyone, to our winter story night. We have some wonderful young readers sharing their original stories tonight." Jack's attention drifted to the entrance as a familiar figure quietly stepped inside. Evelyn wore a simple sweater and jeans, her hair loose around her shoulders. She carried a children's book, looking uncertain until Mia spotted her and waved enthusiastically from the front row. A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Tommy turned his wheelchair slightly, studying Evelyn with narrowed eyes. But she kept her focus on Mia, finding an empty seat near the wall. Several children presented their stories, tales of magical pets and space adventures. When Mia's turn came, Jack sat up straighter. His daughter approached the microphone with her hand-illustrated pages clutched to her chest. "My story is called The Princess Who Wanted to Be Real," Mia announced clearly. Jack watched Evelyn's shoulders tense. Mia's story unfolded simply, but touched something deep. She described a lonely princess who disguised herself as a village girl because she was tired of people only seeing her crown. The princess made real friends for the first time, especially with a brave knight and his daughter. But when everyone discovered her true identity, they felt betrayed. "But the knight's daughter still loved the princess," Mia read, because she knew that sometimes people hide scary things about themselves until they feel safe enough to share them. Jack's throat tightened. He saw Evelyn discreetly wipe her eyes. After the children's presentations, Mrs. Patterson returned to the microphone. "And now, we have a surprise guest reader." She hesitated. "Ms. Evelyn Hartwell has volunteered to share a story." The room grew still. Evelyn stood slowly, book in hand. She walked to the front with grace, but Jack recognized the tension in her shoulders, the same tension she'd carried that first day in the cafe. "Thank you for letting me be here tonight," she said softly. "This was my brother's favorite book when we were children. I used to read it to him when he was scared." She opened the worn copy of The Giving Tree and began to read. Her voice grew stronger with each page, full of warmth and expression. The children leaned forward, drawn in by the story of selfless love and sacrifice. Jack watched the faces around him slowly change. Tommy's stern expression softened. Mrs. Miller, who'd been one of the loudest gossips, dabbed her eyes with a tissue. The children gathered closer, sitting cross-legged on the floor near Evelyn's feet. When she finished, there was a moment of perfect silence before the applause began. A little girl raised her hand. "Yes, sweetheart?" Evelyn asked. "Are you really a billionaire?" Several parents gasped, but Evelyn just smiled. "I run a big company, yes. But you know what? The happiest I've been lately was right here, reading stories with all of you." "Do you have a crown?" another child asked. Evelyn laughed, a real laugh that made her eyes crinkle. "No crown. Just a lot of boring meetings and paperwork, but I'd rather be here." "Like the princess in Mia's story?" a boy called out. "Yes," Evelyn said softly, meeting Jack's eyes across the room. "Very much like that." After the formal program ended, people lingered to chat. To Jack's surprise, several veterans approached Evelyn, including Tommy. They spoke quietly for several minutes, and he saw her hand Tommy a business card. "She's offering to fund a new wheelchair basketball program at the VA." Cora appeared beside Jack, making him jump. And she didn't press release it or make a big show. Just listen to what Tommy said they needed. "How do you know that?" "Because I asked him." Cora nudged her brother. "She's not playing games, Jack. She's trying to put down roots here, real ones." Jack watched as Mia hugged Evelyn goodbye. The little girl pointed toward the back of the room, and Evelyn turned, seeing him. After a moment's hesitation, she gathered her things and walked over. "That was a beautiful story Mia wrote," she said. "She's got a gift for seeing truth in things," Jack replied. An awkward silence fell. Cora rolled her eyes and walked away, leaving them alone. "I should go," Evelyn said. "It's getting late. I'll walk you to your car." They stepped out into the cool evening air. The parking lot was nearly empty, and their footsteps echoed on the asphalt. "Thank you," Evelyn said suddenly, "for not stopping Mia from inviting me. She's got good instincts about people, better than mine sometimes." They reached Evelyn's car, a modest sedan, not the usual town car. She turned to face him. "I never meant to deceive you, Jack. When you pulled me from that wreck, I was running away from everything. My board wanted me to step down. The media was camping outside my house. I just broke." "I understand running," Jack said quietly. "After Sarah died, I almost left town. Couldn't stand the sympathy, the casseroles, the way everyone looked at me and Mia." "What made you stay?" "Realized running doesn't fix what's broken inside you." He gestured to the school building. "Had to build something real instead." Evelyn leaned against her car, shoulders slumping. I'm so tired of being Evelyn Hartwell, CEO all the time, of never knowing if people like me or what I can do for them." Her voice cracked. "These past few weeks, being just Eve, it felt real. You and Mia made me feel real." "You are real," Jack said. "The woman who reads stories to kids and remembers her brother's favorite book and wants to help without getting credit. That's not an act. That's you." "How can you be sure?" "Because that's who you were before you knew I knew who you were." He smiled slightly. "If that makes any sense." The winter sun painted the snow-covered hill in brilliant white, making Evelyn squint as she watched Jack teaching Mia how to position herself on the wooden sled. The cold air nipped at her cheeks, but she couldn't stop smiling at their enthusiasm. "You've got to lean back a little," Jack instructed, adjusting Mia's grip on the rope. "And keep your feet up." "I know, Daddy," Mia giggled. "I've done this before." "Well, Miss Expert, maybe you should teach Eve how it's done then," Jack suggested, winking at Evelyn. Evelyn wrapped her wool scarf tighter around her neck. "Oh, I don't know about that. It's been decades since I've been on a sled." "Please, Eve?" Mia hopped off her sled and grabbed Evelyn's hand. "It's super easy, and Daddy will go down with you the first time." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Will I now?" "Unless you're scared," Evelyn teased, surprising herself with her playfulness. "Scared? Ma'am, I jumped out of perfectly good airplanes in the Army. A little sledding hill doesn't scare me." He patted the longer wooden sled. "Hop on." Evelyn carefully settled onto the front of the sled, her heart racing a bit when Jack sat behind her. His strong arms reached around to grip the rope, and she could feel the warmth of him against her back. "Ready?" he asked softly near her ear. "No," she laughed nervously. "Perfect time to start then." He pushed off with his feet, and suddenly they were sliding down the hill. The cold wind whipped past them as they picked up speed. Evelyn let out a surprised shriek that turned into genuine laughter. She heard Jack chuckling behind her as they zoomed past other families on the hill. When they finally slowed to a stop at the bottom, Evelyn's cheeks hurt from smiling. "That was incredible. Again, again," Mia called from the top of the hill, already preparing for her own run. They spent the next hour taking turns on the sleds. Evelyn couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so free. No phone calls, no emails, no board meetings or press conferences. Just the sound of laughter, the crunch of snow, and the simple joy of playing like a child again. During one run, Mia convinced them all to pile onto the big sled together. Jack sat in back, Evelyn in the middle, and Mia up front. They careened down the hill faster than before, all three of them whooping with delight until they hit a bump and toppled sideways into a snowbank. "Is everyone okay?" Jack asked immediately, but his concern dissolved into laughter when he saw Evelyn and Mia, covered in snow, both giggling uncontrollably. "Your face," Mia pointed at Evelyn. "You've got snow in your hair." "So do you." Evelyn reached over and playfully dusted some snow off Mia's winter hat. Jack stood and offered them both his hands, pulling them up from the snowbank. His gloved hand lingered in Evelyn's for a moment longer than necessary, and their eyes met with shared warmth. "I'm getting cold," Mia announced, breaking the moment. "Can we get hot chocolate?" "There's that little cafe around the corner," Jack suggested. "They make it with real chocolate." The cafe was cozy and quiet, with just a few other families warming up from the winter activities. They found a booth near the back, away from the windows. Evelyn noticed how Jack automatically chose the seat facing the door. Old military habits, she supposed. The waitress brought them 3 steaming mugs of hot chocolate, topped with whipped cream and chocolate shavings. Mia immediately dove in, ending up with whipped cream on her nose. "Careful there, monkey," Jack laughed, handing her a napkin. "You're wearing more than you're drinking." Evelyn wrapped her cold hands around her mug, savoring the warmth. "This is exactly what I needed. Thank you both for today. I can't remember the last time I just played." "Never?" Mia asked, eyes wide with concern. "Well, not for a very long time. When you run a big company, people expect you to be serious all the time." "That's silly," Mia declared. "Daddy runs his own business, and he still plays with me." "Your daddy is very wise, then." Evelyn smiled at Jack over her mug. "He's the best daddy ever." Mia nodded seriously. "And he's not sad so much anymore since you came." Jack nearly choked on his hot chocolate. "Mia." But Mia wasn't finished. She looked at Evelyn with those innocent, searching eyes that could see straight through to the heart of things. "Are you going to be my new mommy?" The question hung in the air like a delicate snowflake. Evelyn felt tears welling up in her eyes, unable to speak. She glanced at Jack, who sat completely still, speechless. Jack's porch light cast a warm glow across the wooden boards as he and Evelyn stood facing each other. The evening air was crisp, their breath visible in small clouds between them. Inside, the dishes from their hot chocolate cafe visit were still soaking in the sink. "About what Mia said," Jack started, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry if that made you uncomfortable." Evelyn shook her head. "No, please don't apologize. She's a child with a beautiful heart. That's something to be proud of." "Not just about that," Jack continued, his voice growing softer. "I need to apologize for how I acted when I found out who you really were. I let other people's opinions cloud my judgment. I pushed you away because I was scared." "Scared of what?" Evelyn asked, stepping closer. Jack's eyes met hers in the dim light. "Scared of feeling something real again. Scared of what it might mean to let someone in. When Sarah died, I built these walls. Then you came along and started breaking them down, without even trying." Evelyn reached out and touched his arm gently. "I understand walls, Jack. I've spent my whole life building them, being Eve, just Eve, with you and Mia. It's the first time in years I've felt like myself." "You know what Mia said to me the other day?" Jack smiled softly. "She said, 'Daddy,' when Eve smiles, she looks like she's finally waking up from a long nap. Out of the mouths of babes, right?" Evelyn laughed, wiping away a tear that had escaped. "She's not wrong. Being here, being with you both, it's like waking up." Jack took a step closer, closing the distance between them. His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb gently brushing away another tear. "I'm sorry I hurt you, Evelyn, or Eve, whichever you prefer." "I like how you say both," she whispered. The porch light flickered slightly as snow began to fall around them. Jack's eyes dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes, asking a silent question. Evelyn answered by leaning in slightly, and their lips met in a soft, tender kiss. It was gentle at first, hesitant, like two people learning a new language. Then Evelyn's hands found their way to Jack's chest, and his other arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, carrying with it all the words they hadn't said, all the feelings they'd been holding back. A small giggle from inside broke them apart. They turned to see Mia quickly ducking away from the window, her shadow disappearing into the living room. "I should probably go check on our spy," Jack chuckled, but he didn't move away. "You should," Evelyn agreed, making no attempt to step back either. They shared another quick kiss before Jack reluctantly released her. "Will you stay? Through Christmas, I mean. The town's getting ready for the annual tree lighting festival, and Mia's been talking about it non-stop." Evelyn's face lit up. "The festival? I saw some flyers in town, but they seemed a bit faded." "Yeah. Budget's been tight the last few years. The committee does what they can, but—" "Let me help," Evelyn interrupted. "Not as the CEO of Hartwell Living, but as Eve, as part of the community." Jack studied her face. "You really want to?" "More than anything. I've spent years writing checks for charitable causes, but I've never actually been part of making something special happen. Let me do this, please?" Jack pretended to think about it. "Well, the festival committee meets tomorrow morning at the diner. I suppose I could put in a good word with Martha. She runs the whole thing." "Thank you," Evelyn beamed, giving him another quick kiss. "I should go. It's getting late, and you have a certain window watcher to tend to. I'll walk you to your car." They made their way down the porch steps, Jack's hand finding the small of her back naturally. When they reached her car, Evelyn turned to face him one more time. "Jack? Today was perfect, all of it. The sledding, the hot chocolate, This, she gestured between them. I haven't felt this happy in years. Jack pulled her close for one more embrace. Neither have I. As Evelyn drove away, snow falling gently on her windshield, she couldn't stop smiling. She had meetings she should attend remotely, emails piling up, and a board that was probably wondering where she'd disappeared to. But for the first time in her life, none of that seemed important. She pulled into the driveway of her rented cabin and sat there for a moment, watching the snow accumulate on the hood of her car. Christmas was only 2 weeks away. The tree lighting festival could be something special, something that would bring the whole town together. Reaching for her tablet, she began making notes. The old decorations needed updating, the square could use better lighting, and surely there must be local artisans who could contribute their talents. Her mind raced with possibilities, not as a CEO planning a corporate event, but as someone who simply wanted to give back to a community that had given her something priceless, a chance to be herself. Inside her cabin, Evelyn changed into comfortable clothes and made herself a cup of tea. She curled up on the window seat, watching the snow fall, and began sketching out ideas for the festival. For the first time in her career, she wasn't thinking about profit margins or shareholder value. She was thinking about children's smiles, about families gathering together, about creating memories that would last long after the lights came down. She thought about Jack's kiss, about Mia's innocent question, about the way they both made her feel like she belonged somewhere for the first time in her life. The festival wasn't just about lights and decorations. It was about building something real in a place that had become more home to her than anywhere else. Tomorrow, she would meet with Martha and the committee. She would listen more than speak, learn what the festival meant to them, and find ways to enhance their vision rather than override it. This wasn't about being Evelyn Hartwell, CEO. This was about being Eve, a woman who had found something worth holding on to in a small town that had saved her in more ways than one. The Veterans Shelter was a modest building on the outskirts of town, its brick walls weathered by decades of harsh winters. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead as Jack led Evelyn through the main corridor. The scent of coffee and tonight's simple dinner, beef stew and cornbread, wafted from the kitchen. I usually help serve dinner on Thursdays, Jack explained, handing her an apron. Some of these guys, they've been through a lot. They might be a bit rough around the edges at first. Evelyn tied the apron around her waist, noticing how different it felt from her designer clothes. Just treat me like any other volunteer, Jack. That's all I want to be tonight. Tommy Delgado wheeled himself out of the kitchen, his wheelchair squeaking slightly. Jack, who's your friend? His voice was gruff but friendly. Tommy, this is Eve. She'd like to help out tonight. Tommy's eyes narrowed slightly, studying her. You look familiar. I've been around town lately, Evelyn said simply, meeting his gaze. Need any help in the kitchen? Tommy's weathered face softened. Always. Come on, I'll show you where everything is. For the next hour, Evelyn worked alongside the other volunteers, ladling stew into bowls and cutting thick slices of cornbread. Her perfectly manicured nails disappeared under work gloves as she washed dishes between serving. She noticed how Jack seemed different here, more relaxed, as if the weight he usually carried lifted slightly when helping others. As veterans began filing in for dinner, Evelyn watched their faces. Some avoided eye contact, others stared too long, recognizing her perhaps but unsure why. She smiled warmly at each one, learning their names, asking gentle questions about their day. An elderly veteran named Frank settled into a corner table alone. His hands shook as he tried to manage his spoon. Without drawing attention, Evelyn brought him a slice of bread already buttered and cut into easier pieces. Thank you, miss, he mumbled, eyes down. Mind if I join you for a minute, Frank? Evelyn asked, already pulling out a chair. I've been on my feet all evening, and you look like you might have some interesting stories to tell. Frank glanced up, surprise flickering across his face. Not many people ask about those anymore. I'm asking. For the next 20 minutes, Frank told her about his time as a combat medic in Vietnam. His voice grew stronger as he spoke, hands steadier as he gestured. Evelyn listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that showed she was truly hearing him. Across the room, Jack watched while helping Tommy organize supply donations. He saw how Evelyn moved from table to table throughout the evening, not just serving food, but serving attention, real, genuine interest in each person's story. When Marcus, a younger veteran who rarely spoke, mentioned his struggle finding work because of his PTSD, Evelyn didn't offer empty platitudes. Instead, she took out a small notebook and wrote down specific resources, connections, and ideas. She never mentioned her position or wealth, just listened and offered practical suggestions as one human being to another. "Your girl's got a way about her," Tommy commented to Jack, watching Evelyn help an older veteran navigate the coffee station. "Doesn't act like she's doing charity work, acts like she's having dinner with family." Jack felt warmth spread through his chest. "Yeah, she does." As the evening wound down, Evelyn joined several veterans who were sharing stories about their service dogs. She pulled out her phone to show pictures of her own childhood dog, laughing at their jokes and adding her own observations about the healing power of animal companions. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "this space could really use a comfortable seating area. Somewhere people could just sit and talk, or read, or just be." "Dream on," one of the veterans chuckled. "Budget's tight enough as it is." "Sometimes dreams have a way of coming true," Evelyn replied with a small smile, "especially when a community comes together." Later, as they were cleaning up, Jack noticed Evelyn deep in conversation with Tommy. They were hunched over some papers, discussing improvements the shelter needed. Tommy was gesturing animatedly, more engaged than Jack had seen him in months. "The heating system's shot," Tommy was saying, "and we could use better accessibility features, but those are pipe dreams." "Nothing's a pipe dream if you have the right plan," Evelyn responded. "Let me make some calls, not as a CEO, just as someone who knows people who might want to help." Tommy studied her face for a long moment. "You're not what I expected, Eve." "What did you expect?" "Someone who'd sweep in here trying to fix everything with money and press releases. Instead, you just showed up, worked, listened." Evelyn's eyes grew soft. "Sometimes that's all any of us need, someone to show up and listen." As the last of the veterans prepared to leave, one of them, a quiet man named David who had sat alone all evening, approached Evelyn. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Ma'am?" "Yes, David?" "I just wanted to say thank you. Not just for the food or the company, but for seeing us. Really seeing us. Most people look at us and see broken soldiers or charity cases. You looked at us and saw people." Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes, but she blinked them back. "That's because that's exactly what you are, people. Amazing, strong, valuable people who deserve to be seen." David nodded once, then slipped out into the night. Jack, who had been wiping down tables nearby, felt his heart swell with pride. This was the woman he was falling for, not the billionaire CEO, but the person who could make others feel truly seen. Tommy wheeled over to them as they finished cleaning. "You're welcome back anytime, Eve, anytime at all." Evelyn squeezed his shoulder gently. "Try to keep me away." Snow fell softly over Main Street as crowds gathered for the annual Christmas Eve tree lighting ceremony. White lights twinkled in every shop window, and the massive evergreen in the town square stood ready for its big moment, unlit branches dusted with fresh powder. Mia bounced excitedly between Jack and Evelyn, her red winter coat bright against the falling snow. "Can we get hot chocolate, please?" She tugged at both their hands, creating a bridge between them. "Of course we can, sweetheart." Evelyn smiled, already steering them toward the local cafe that had set up an outdoor stand. Steam rose from giant urns of cocoa, and the scent of peppermint filled the air. Jack watched as Evelyn ordered 3 hot chocolates, extra marshmallows for Mia. She looked different tonight, relaxed, genuine. She wore a simple wool coat and knit hat, her CEO persona nowhere in sight. Just Eve, as she'd first introduced herself to him. "Look!" Mia pointed toward a group of children huddled near the community center steps. Some wore thin jackets or oversized hand-me-downs, while others shivered in sweatshirts despite the cold. Evelyn's expression softened as she observed them. Without a word, she squeezed Jack's hand and walked toward Sarah Miller, the town's social services coordinator. "Those children," Evelyn said quietly to Sarah, "they need proper winter coats." Sarah sighed. "We do what we can with our budget, but I'd like to help. Not as a publicity stunt, just as a neighbor who cares." Evelyn pulled out her phone. "I know a manufacturer who owes me a favor. How many coats do you need?" "At least 50 kids need winter gear, but that's too much to ask." "It's not asking if it's freely given." Evelyn was already typing. "They can have a truck here in an hour. Good quality coats, hats, and gloves. Different sizes, colors too. Let the kids choose what they like." Sarah's eyes welled up. "Eve, I don't know what to say. Say you'll help distribute them? I'd rather stay in the background." Word spread quickly through the crowd. Within minutes, volunteer teams organized to receive and sort the incoming coats. Jack overheard snippets of conversation, noting how people spoke about Evelyn differently now, not as the billionaire CEO, but as Eve, the woman who read stories at school and served meals at the shelter. Mia tugged at Evelyn's sleeve. "Can I help give out coats too?" "That's a wonderful idea," Evelyn smiled. "Everyone deserves to be warm at Christmas." The truck arrived as promised, and the community center buzzed with activity. Children tried on coats in every color imaginable, their faces lighting up as they found perfect fits. Parents whispered tearful thank yous, which Evelyn deflected with gentle smiles and questions about their families. Tommy Delgado wheeled through the crowd, helping organize sizes. "Never seen anything like this," he said to Jack. "No cameras, no press releases, just quiet kindness." "That's who she really is," Jack replied, watching Evelyn help a small girl zip up a purple coat. The mayor approached the microphone set up near the tree. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's almost time for the lighting, but first, I'd like to thank someone special. Eve." He paused, looking around until he spotted her trying to blend into the crowd. "Would you come up here?" Evelyn shook her head, but the crowd's encouraging applause drew her forward. Jack gave her hand a squeeze as she passed. "Miss Hartwell has shown us what community really means," the mayor continued, "not through grand gestures or public statements, but through simple presence. Serving meals, reading to our children, and yes, making sure every child has a warm coat this winter. She came to our town as a stranger, but has become family." The crowd's applause was genuine this time, punctuated by calls of "Thank you, Eve," and "Merry Christmas." Red-cheeked from the attention, Evelyn hurried back to Jack and Mia as the countdown to the lighting began. 10, 9, 8. Mia scrambled onto Jack's shoulders for a better view. 7, 6, 5. Evelyn slipped her hand into Jack's, their fingers intertwining naturally. 4, 3, 2, 1. The tree blazed to life, thousands of white lights transforming the evergreen into a beacon of holiday magic. Cheers erupted from the crowd as music began playing through speakers around the square. "It's beautiful," Mia breathed from her perch. "Yes, it is," Jack agreed, but he was looking at Evelyn. As the crowd dispersed toward various Christmas Eve activities, Evelyn, Jack, and Mia walked through the winter wonderland that Main Street had become. They stopped to admire window displays and waved to friends. Real friends now, not just polite acquaintances. "Daddy, can I go make a snow angel with Katie?" Mia pointed to her friend from school, who was playing in the fresh powder near the gazebo. "Stay where we can see you," Jack called as Mia raced off. Alone for a moment, Jack and Evelyn wandered toward a quiet spot near the tree. Colored lights played across their faces as snowflakes continued their gentle dance around them. "Thank you," Jack said softly. "For what?" "For being exactly who you are. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just Eve, the woman who sees people and cares enough to help without making a show of it." Evelyn's eyes shimmered in the Christmas lights. "This town, you and Mia, you've given me something priceless. A chance to remember who I am, beneath all the titles and expectations. Jack brushed a snowflake from her cheek. "I'm finally starting to believe in second chances," he whispered, drawing her close. Their kiss was gentle, warm against the winter chill. Around them, snow fell silently, Christmas carols floated on the air, and the town's tree glowed like 1,000 stars brought down to earth. The morning after Christmas dawned cold and gray. Jack was making pancakes while Mia set the table, both still glowing from last night's magical evening, when his phone started buzzing incessantly. "Daddy, your phone's going crazy," Mia said, counting the incoming notifications. Jack wiped his hands on a dishcloth and picked up his phone. His stomach dropped as he saw dozens of missed calls, text messages, and news alerts. The top headline made his heart sink. Billionaire CEO Evelyn Hartwell found. Romance with small-town hero. Below was a photo of him and Evelyn kissing under the Christmas tree lights. His private moment had become national news. A car door slammed outside, then another, and another. Jack moved to the window and pulled back the curtain. His peaceful street had transformed into a media circus. News vans lined both sides of the road, and photographers with long lenses were already positioning themselves on his lawn. "Mia, honey, stay away from the windows," Jack said, trying to keep his voice calm. His phone rang again. This time it was Cora, his sister. "Jack, turn on the news. You're everywhere." He clicked on the TV, and there it was. His life splashed across the morning shows. Reporters speculated about the fairy tale romance between the billionaire and the handyman. Some questioned his motives, wondering if he'd orchestrated the car accident to gain her attention. "They're saying such mean things about you, Daddy," Mia said, her lower lip trembling as she watched the TV. The doorbell rang, then knocked, then rang again. "Miss Hartwell, Mr. Connolly, just a few questions. How long have you been dating? Was the car accident staged?" Jack's hands clenched into fists. This was exactly what he'd feared when he first learned Evelyn's true identity. His quiet life, his daughter's security, all of it threatened by public scrutiny. His phone buzzed again. "Evelyn." "Jack, I'm so sorry," she said when he answered. "I had no idea they'd followed me here. My PR team is working to contain this." "Contain this?" Jack's voice was tight. "There are dozens of reporters on my lawn. They're questioning whether I staged your accident. They're digging into my past, Evelyn." I know. Let me send security." "No." Jack watched as Mia huddled on the couch, covering her ears to block out the shouting outside. "No more. This isn't the life I want for my daughter." A camera flash went off through the kitchen window. Jack yanked the curtain shut. "Where are you now?" he asked Evelyn. "At the cabin. They haven't found me here yet, but stay there, I'm coming to you." Jack called Cora, who agreed to pick up Mia through the back door and take her to her house. He waited until they were safely gone before stepping onto his porch. The reporters surged forward, microphones thrust toward him like weapons. "Mr. Connolly, is it true you're engaged to Miss Hartwell? How does it feel to date a billionaire? Were you aware of the corporate scandal when you started dating?" Jack pushed through them without a word, got in his truck, and drove to Evelyn's cabin. The media caravan followed, but he lost them by taking back roads he'd known since childhood. Evelyn was waiting on the cabin's porch, looking small and lost in an oversized sweater. Her eyes were red from crying. "I never wanted this for you," she said as he approached. "For Mia." "I know." Jack's voice was gentle but firm. "But this is your world, isn't it? The cameras, the speculation, the loss of privacy. It doesn't have to be. We can wait it out. The news cycle will move on." "And then what? The next time we're photographed together? The next scandal or rumor?" Jack ran a hand through his hair. "I've spent 9 years building a safe, stable life for Mia after losing her mother. In one morning, that stability is gone." Evelyn stepped closer, reaching for his hand. "We can protect her. I can hire security, move you both to a gated community." "That's exactly what I don't want." Jack pulled away. "I don't want Mia growing up behind gates, afraid of cameras, wondering if every new friend is genuine or just seeking publicity. "Jack, please." Evelyn's voice cracked. "What we have is real. We can figure this out." "I believe you." Jack's eyes softened. "Everything about you, the real you, Eve, is beautiful. But this world you live in, the publicity, the constant scrutiny, it would destroy everything I've built for Mia." Tears spilled down Evelyn's cheeks. "So that's it? We just give up? You need to leave." The words felt like glass in Jack's throat. "Go back to your life. Let the media follow you somewhere else. Give Mia back her privacy." "I love her," Evelyn whispered. "I love you both. I know." Jack stepped back, each movement painful. "That's why you'll do this. Because you love us enough to protect us." Evelyn pressed her hands to her mouth, trying to stifle a sob. Behind them, the first news van had discovered the cabin's location, crunching up the gravel drive. "Go," Jack said softly. "Please." Evelyn nodded, tears flowing freely now. She turned and walked into the cabin, closing the door behind her. Jack stood there for a long moment, then walked to his truck as cameras began clicking in the distance. He drove away as Evelyn's security team arrived to manage her departure, his rearview mirror filled with the chaos he was choosing to leave behind. For Mia, for peace, for the simple life he'd promised his daughter. But his heart stayed behind in that cabin, with a woman who'd shown him how to believe in love again, even if believing wasn't enough to overcome the reality of their different worlds. The January cold bit through Jack's worn work jacket as he knelt in Mrs. Henderson's garden, fixing her broken sprinkler system. His hands moved mechanically through the familiar motions, checking pipes, replacing washers, tightening connections. The work kept his mind occupied, kept him from thinking about. He shook his head, focusing on the task at hand. "Jack Connolly, you've been out here for hours," Mrs. Henderson called from her back porch. "Come in for some coffee, dear. You'll freeze." "Almost done, ma'am," he replied without looking up. It had been like this for a week now. Taking on extra jobs, working longer hours, avoiding the concerned looks and whispered conversations that followed him around town. The media circus had mostly moved on, chasing Evelyn to her next location, but the aftermath lingered like frost on windows. His phone buzzed in his pocket, probably Cora again. She'd been trying to get him to talk, to process what happened. He ignored it. The sun was setting by the time he finished the repair. Mrs. Henderson tried to pay him extra, her eyes full of sympathy he couldn't stand to see. He refused politely and hurried to his truck. At home, the house felt empty and quiet. Mia was at her after-school art program, something Evelyn had helped fund, though the school board didn't know that. Jack tried not to think about how many of the recent improvements around town had her invisible fingerprints on them. He mechanically started dinner preparations, chopping vegetables with more force than necessary. The local news played in the background, white noise to fill the silence. In business news, Hartwell Living stocks rose today following CEO Evelyn Hartwell's return to. Jack switched off the TV. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Tommy Delgado from the Veterans Center. "Hey, brother, we missed you at the meeting today." Tommy's gruff voice came through. "Third one you've skipped. Been busy with work," Jack muttered, stirring pasta sauce. "Yeah? Or busy hiding?" "Tommy. Look, the guys are asking about you, about her. They're worried." Jack's jaw tightened. "Nothing to worry about. It's over." "Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, I've got to go. Dinner's burning." Jack hung up before Tommy could respond. The sauce wasn't actually burning, but he'd lost his appetite anyway. He leaned against the counter, closing his eyes. The house felt wrong somehow, too quiet, too empty, like something vital had been removed. He heard Cora's car pull up outside, bringing Mia home from art class. His daughter's footsteps on the porch were slower than usual, lacking their typical bounce. "Hi, Dad," she said quietly as she came in. "Hey, sweetheart. How was art class?" "Fine." She dropped her backpack by the door instead of hanging it up like usual. "We drew pictures of our families today." Jack's hand stilled on the spoon he was holding. "Yeah? What did you draw? Mia pulled out a piece of paper and laid it on the counter without meeting his eyes. Jack's chest tightened as he looked at it. The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands: a tall man with brown hair, a little girl, and a woman with blonde hair wearing a blue dress, the same color as the one Evelyn had worn at the tree lighting. Mrs. Patterson said we should draw our whole family, Mia said, her voice small. I drew Miss Eve too. Is that okay? Jack swallowed hard. Of course it's okay, honey. Then why did you make her leave? The question hit him like a physical blow. He turned away, pretending to check the pasta. It's complicated, Mia. No, it's not. There was an edge to her voice he'd never heard before. She was sad and lonely, and we made her happy. She made us happy, too. You always tell me we should help people who are hurting. This is different. Why? Mia's voice rose. Because people were mean about it on TV? Because they said bad things? You told me not to listen when Billy Martinez made fun of my old shoes. You said what other people think doesn't matter if you know what's right. Jack turned back to face his daughter, shocked by the tears in her eyes. You're always helping people at the Veterans Center, Mia continued, her small hands balled into fists. You help Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Rodriguez and everyone else in town. But Miss Eve needed help too. She needed us. Why didn't you help her? The words struck deep, piercing through the protective numbness Jack had built around himself. He saw himself through his daughter's eyes, not as the protective father he thought he was being, but as someone who had turned his back on a person they both cared about. You made her leave, Mia whispered, tears now falling freely. You always told me to help people who are hurting. Why didn't you help her? Jack stood frozen, his daughter's words echoing in his head. All his carefully constructed reasons, protecting Mia, maintaining their privacy, avoiding the complications of Evelyn's world, suddenly felt hollow against the simple wisdom of a child's heart. He looked at the drawing again. 3 figures, holding hands, forming a complete picture, a family. His throat tightened as he realized what he'd really done, not just pushing Evelyn away, but teaching his daughter the wrong lesson about love, courage, and helping others. Mia picked up her drawing and walked to her room, leaving Jack alone with the weight of her words and the sound of her quiet sobs echoing down the hallway. The pasta sauce bubbled on the stove, forgotten, as Jack stood in his kitchen, shaken by the truth his 9-year-old daughter had just shown him with devastating clarity. The morning sun cast long shadows across the frozen lake as Jack's boots crunched through fresh snow. He hadn't planned to come here, had actively avoided it if he was honest. But after Mia's words last night, after lying awake until dawn replaying every moment of the past few weeks, his truck had somehow found its way to the Lakeside parking lot. This was where he'd brought Evelyn that day when she'd first opened up about feeling lost. The wooden bench where they'd sat still held a dusting of snow, untouched by other visitors. Jack brushed it clean and sat down, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. He could still see her there beside him, her elegant profile softened by the borrowed wool hat he'd insisted she wear. She'd laughed when he'd pulled it from his glove compartment. A simple gray thing, nothing like the designer clothes she usually wore. But she'd put it on without hesitation, her eyes twinkling. It's been years since I just sat somewhere, she'd told him that day, without checking emails or taking calls or thinking about the next meeting. Now, Jack understood what she'd really been saying. She'd been trying to show him who she was beneath the CEO title, just a woman looking for peace, for connection, for someone to see her as simply Eve. A chickadee landed on a nearby branch, shaking snow from the pine needles. Jack watched it hop from twig to twig, remembering how Evelyn had pointed out the different birds to Mia during their walks. She'd known all their names, their calls, their habits. My brother taught me, she'd explained softly. Before, she'd never finished that sentence, but her eyes had held such pain that Jack had reached for her hand without thinking. Now he wondered about that brother, about all the pieces of her story he'd never asked to hear. He'd been so focused on protecting himself, on guarding against hurt, that he'd missed the courage it took for her to try again, to risk her heart. "Some protector I turned out to be," he muttered to the empty air. The truth was, he hadn't protected anyone. Not Mia, who now cried herself to sleep, missing the woman who'd brought such joy back into their home. Not Evelyn, who'd finally found a place where she could be herself, only to have it snatched away. And certainly not himself, because despite his best efforts, despite all his walls and careful distance, his heart had gone and fallen for her anyway. Jack pulled out his phone, thumbing through old messages. There was one from Evelyn, sent the morning after he'd told her to leave. "I understand. I'm sorry for bringing chaos into your life. Please tell Mia I'll miss her stories." No anger, no accusations, just grace, and that same gentle kindness that had drawn him to her from the start. The winter wind picked up, cutting through his jacket, but Jack barely noticed. His mind was too full of memories. Evelyn teaching Mia to make paper snowflakes at the kitchen table. Her quiet determination as she served meals at the Veterans Center, listening to each person's story with genuine interest. The way she'd looked at him under the Christmas lights, hope and fear and love all mixed together in her eyes. Tommy's words from their last conversation at the center came back to him. "You know what's worse than getting hurt, brother? Never taking the chance to be happy because you're too scared of the pain." Jack stood up abruptly, his decision crystallizing like frost on glass. He'd been a fool, letting fear of what might happen stop him from embracing what was right in front of him. Evelyn had shown more courage in those few weeks than he had in years, stepping out of her comfort zone, facing public scrutiny, opening her heart, despite all the risks. It was time he showed some courage, too. Back in his truck, Jack pulled out his phone again, this time dialing his sister's number. "Well, look who finally decided to rejoin the land of the living," Cora answered. "I need a favor," Jack said, starting the engine. "Can Mia stay with you tonight?" There was a pause. "Depends. Are you finally going to fix this mess you've made?" "Going to try." "Then yes, bring her over whenever you're ready." "And Jack?" "Yeah? Don't screw it up this time." He ended the call and drove home, mind racing with plans. The Chicago address wasn't hard to find. Hartwell Living's headquarters was a well-known landmark downtown. Getting through security might be another matter, but he'd figure that out when he got there. At home, Jack moved with purpose. He packed a small overnight bag, just in case. Clean clothes, toothbrush, the small photo album Mia had made with pictures from Christmas. His hand hesitated over his dress shirt, the one he'd worn to the tree lighting, before adding it to the bag. Mia was waiting for him when he came out of his room, her own overnight bag already packed. "Are you going to get her?" she asked simply. Jack knelt down to her level. "I'm going to try, sweetheart. I can't promise." "She'll listen," Mia said with that strange certainty children sometimes have. "She loves us." Jack hugged his daughter tight, wondering when she'd gotten so wise. "When did you figure that out?" "When she looked at us. Nobody else looks at us like that." Jack felt tears prick at his eyes. "I'm sorry I messed things up, Mia." She pulled back and gave him a serious look. "You can fix it. That's what you do, you fix things." After dropping Mia at Cora's, enduring his sister's knowing smile and whispered, "Good luck," Jack pointed his truck toward Chicago. The city was 3 hours away, plenty of time to think about what he'd say when he got there. But all his carefully rehearsed speeches felt hollow compared to the simple truth. He'd been wrong, and he wanted another chance. The highway stretched out before him, gray asphalt disappearing into the winter horizon. Jack adjusted his grip on the steering wheel, feeling more certain with every mile. Maybe this was crazy. Maybe he'd get turned away at the door. Maybe the gossip sites would have a field day with "Local Handyman Pursues Billionaire." But for the first time since that night by the burning car, he wasn't letting fear make his choices for him. He was choosing hope instead. The gleaming glass tower of Hartwell Living's headquarters stretched toward the winter sky like a giant icicle. Jack pulled his truck into the nearest parking garage, feeling distinctly out of place among the luxury vehicles. His weathered work boots echoed on the polished marble floor of the lobby as he approached the security desk. "I need to see Evelyn Hartwell," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The security guard barely glanced up. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but—" "Then I'm afraid that won't be possible. Ms. Hartwell isn't taking any unscheduled visitors." Jack leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Look, I'm Jack Connolly. She knows me. Could you just—" "Sir, there's a press conference starting in an hour. Unless you're credentialed media, I'll have to ask you to leave." "Press conference?" Jack's stomach tightened. A young woman in a tailored suit overheard and paused. "The CEO transition announcement," she explained, then did a double take. "Wait, did you say Connolly? From River's Edge?" Jack nodded, hope flickering. "I'm Amanda Chen, Ms. Hartwell's assistant." She studied him carefully. "She's stepping down today. The board meeting just ended." The words hit Jack like a physical blow. "Stepping down? Because of him?" "Please," he said. "I need 5 minutes with her." Amanda's professional mask softened slightly. "She's in back-to-back meetings until the press conference. After that—" She hesitated. "Look, I shouldn't tell you this, but she's leaving straight from the announcement. Her car's already waiting." "I'll wait," Jack said firmly, "however long it takes." Amanda glanced at her phone, then back at Jack. "Third floor press room, but I can't promise anything." Jack spent the next hours pacing the building's vast atrium, watching suited executives hurry past. Occasionally he caught fragments of conversations about leadership transition and fresh direction. Each mention twisted the knot in his gut tighter. The press room filled quickly. Jack stood at the back, trying to blend into the wall. Cameras clicked, and reporters murmured amongst themselves as they waited. Finally, the board members filed in, followed by a man Jack didn't recognize who took the podium. Then Evelyn appeared, and Jack's heart stopped. She looked exactly like the CEO. She was elegant in a charcoal suit, her silver hair swept back, spine straight as steel. But Jack saw what others missed. The slight tremor in her hands as she adjusted her papers, the tension around her eyes that meant she was fighting tears. He'd seen that same look the night of the crash, when she'd begged him not to tell anyone who she was. Now he understood she hadn't just been hiding from scandal. She'd been searching for a way to be herself again. The board chairman droned on about mutual decisions and new chapters. Evelyn stood perfectly still, her public mask firmly in place. But when she stepped up to make her own statement, Jack caught the smallest crack in her voice. "Hartwell Living has been my life's work," she said, "but sometimes we must step back to move forward. I'm grateful for the trust placed in me, and I know the company will continue to thrive under new leadership." She didn't mention River's Edge, didn't mention him. But Jack saw her knuckles whiten on the podium and knew she was thinking of quiet dinners and snowy walks, of Mia's drawings and front porch conversations. The press conference ended in a flurry of camera flashes. Evelyn was quickly surrounded by board members and reporters, all wanting one last word with the departing CEO. Jack pushed forward, but security blocked his path. "Ms. Hartwell isn't taking questions," one guard said firmly. "I'm not press," Jack insisted. "Please, just tell her Jack Connolly is here." The guard's expression hardened. "Sir, step back." Jack watched helplessly as Evelyn was escorted toward a side door. At the last moment, she glanced back and saw him. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Evelyn froze, color draining from her face. For one heartbeat, her careful mask slipped, showing all the pain and longing beneath. Then Amanda was beside her, whispering urgently. Evelyn straightened, composing herself, and turned away. "Wait!" Jack called out. He shouldered past the guard, not caring who heard. "Evelyn, please, one chance to speak publicly." She paused in the doorway, her back still turned. The room had gone silent, dozens of reporters watching the drama unfold. Jack could practically hear their mental headlines. "Small-town handyman confronts billionaire CEO." Let them write what they wanted. He wasn't leaving without being heard. "Just one chance," he repeated softly. "That's all I'm asking." Evelyn's shoulders rose and fell in a deep breath. Slowly she turned to face him. 5 minutes, she said quietly. "In my office." The reporters erupted with questions, but Evelyn was already moving, gesturing for Jack to follow. He caught a glimpse of Amanda's small smile as they passed. The executive boardroom buzzed with tension as shareholders and board members filed in, their whispers echoing off the mahogany walls. Jack stood at the front, his work-worn hands gripping the polished podium. He'd traded his usual flannel for his one good suit, the one he'd worn to Sarah's funeral. It felt tight around the collar, but maybe that was just nerves. Amanda had helped him prepare, explaining the protocol for addressing the board. But as Jack looked out at the sea of expensive suits and skeptical faces, all her coaching evaporated. He spotted Evelyn slipping quietly through a side door, taking a place at the back of the room. Their eyes met briefly before she looked down. The board chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Connolly, you have the floor." Jack took a deep breath. Forget the protocol. Forget the prepared statements. These people needed to hear the truth, plain and simple. "My name is Jack Connolly," he began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I'm a handyman from River's Edge, Minnesota. 3 months ago, I pulled a woman from a burning car on County Road 23. That woman was Evelyn Hartwell." Murmurs rippled through the room. Jack continued, "I didn't know who she was that night. All I knew was someone needed help. But over the next few weeks, I got to know who she really is, not as a CEO, but as a person." He gripped the podium tighter, remembering those early days. "She came to our town looking for peace, yes, but what she found was purpose." While everyone here was focused on stock prices and scandal, she was sitting with veterans at our local shelter, listening to their stories. She was reading to children at our library. Not for publicity, there weren't any cameras, but because she saw they needed someone to care. Jack's voice grew stronger as he spoke about the real Evelyn, the one the headlines had missed. She funded new textbooks for our school anonymously. She helped repair our Veterans Center without asking for recognition. When she learned one of our local families couldn't afford winter coats for their kids, she bought them herself and had them delivered with a note saying they were from Santa. He looked directly at the board members now. "You all know her as a CEO. You've seen the spreadsheets and profit margins. But I've seen her sit on my front porch for hours, helping my 9-year-old daughter with her math homework. I've watched her serve soup at our community kitchen with no makeup, no designer clothes, just a heart full of genuine care for people who needed it." The room had grown completely still. Even the most hardened executives were listening intently. The scandal that drove her into hiding? I don't know the corporate details, but I know Evelyn Hartwell. I've seen her integrity firsthand. I've witnessed her dedication to doing what's right, even when it costs her personally. Jack's voice softened as he continued, "She could have stayed hidden in our town. We would have protected her secret. But she chose to face everything head-on, not because it was easy, but because it was right. That's the kind of leader she is. That's the kind of person she is." He glanced at Evelyn in the back. Tears were streaming down her face, but she stood tall, chin lifted. "You're all here today talking about transition and new direction. But let me tell you something about direction. It's not about where you're going. It's about why you're going there." Evelyn Hartwell built this company on the idea that every home matters, that every family deserves beauty and comfort in their lives. She hasn't lost that vision. If anything, these past months have only strengthened it. Jack straightened his shoulders, looking around the room. "I'm just a handyman. I fix things for a living. And from where I stand, the only thing broken here is the trust between you and the best leader this company could hope for. That's something worth fixing." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You want to know who Evelyn Hartwell really is? She's the woman who sits with strangers in their darkest moments, who sees value in people society has forgotten, who uses her power not to elevate herself, but to lift others up. That's who you're losing if you let her walk away today." The silence in the room was deafening. Jack could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. "Thank you for letting me speak," he concluded simply. "I just thought you should know the truth about the woman I pulled from that car and the lives she's touched since then." For a moment, nobody moved. Then, from somewhere in the middle of the room, someone began to clap. The applause spread slowly at first, then faster, building to a thunderous standing ovation. Board members exchanged meaningful looks. Shareholders whispered urgently to each other. At the back of the room, Evelyn pressed a hand to her mouth, tears flowing freely now. The mask of corporate authority had crumbled completely, revealing the woman Jack had come to know, strong and vulnerable, powerful and genuine, finally seen for who she truly was. The chairman stood, raising his hands for quiet. But before he could speak, someone called out from the audience, "I move to table the transition vote, pending further discussion." "Seconded," came another voice. The applause grew louder. Jack stepped back from the podium, his heart pounding. He hadn't planned this outcome, hadn't dared to hope for it. He'd simply spoken the truth as he knew it. Through the commotion, his eyes found Evelyn's again. This time, she held his gaze, a smile breaking through her tears like sunlight after rain. The boardroom had transformed from a battlefield into a celebration. After 2 hours of intense discussion and voting, the decision was unanimous. Evelyn Hartwell would remain with the company as non-executive chairwoman, focusing on corporate governance and social responsibility, while a new CEO handled day-to-day operations. Evelyn stood at the same podium where Jack had defended her honor just hours before. Her designer suit was perfectly tailored, but her demeanor had changed. The corporate mask was gone, replaced by something more authentic, a blend of authority and genuine warmth that made her presence even more commanding. "Thank you all for your faith in me," she began, her voice clear and strong. "But today isn't about maintaining the status quo. It's about evolution, both personal and professional." She gestured to a screen behind her, where a new logo appeared, the Hartwell Connolly Foundation. Simple, elegant letters intertwined with imagery of homes and helping hands. "I'm proud to announce the creation of the Hartwell Connolly Foundation," she continued. "This independent, nonprofit organization will focus on supporting veterans and single-parent families across America. We'll provide housing assistance, educational opportunities, and community integration programs." Jack, seated in the front row now, felt his chest tighten at seeing his name alongside hers. She hadn't told him about this part. "This foundation represents everything I've learned during my time away," Evelyn explained, her eyes bright with purpose. "It's about recognizing the quiet heroes in our communities, the single parents working multiple jobs to provide for their children, the veterans who served our country and now need our support in return." She outlined the foundation's initial programs: housing renovation projects for veterans, scholarship funds for single parents pursuing education, community centers that would provide childcare and job training. The scope was ambitious, but practical, exactly like Evelyn herself. "We're committing an initial endowment of $50 million, she announced. "But more importantly, we're committing to hands-on involvement. This isn't about writing checks, it's about building relationships and understanding real needs in real communities." The shareholders nodded approvingly. This was more than corporate philanthropy, it was a vision for meaningful change. "And, speaking of real understanding," Evelyn's voice softened slightly, "I'd like to introduce our foundation's co-director." She gestured to Jack. "Jack Connolly isn't just the man who saved my life that night on County Road 23. He's a veteran himself, a single father, and someone who has spent years quietly helping others without seeking recognition. His practical experience and genuine commitment to community service will ensure our foundation stays grounded in reality, not theory." Jack stood awkwardly, unprepared for this moment. He gave a simple nod to the room, his humility only reinforcing Evelyn's words. After the presentation, as people filed out for a catered lunch, Evelyn made her way to Jack's side. "I hope you don't mind," she said softly. "I should have asked before putting your name on it. It's a lot to process," he admitted, tugging at his tie. "But the foundation, what it stands for, it's exactly right." "Would you consider it?" she asked. "Being co-director? You wouldn't have to wear a suit, she added with a small smile. In fact, I'd prefer if you didn't. We need your real-world perspective, not another corporate voice. Before Jack could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from Cora. Mia says kick butt and come home soon. P.S. The reporters finally left your house. Evelyn noticed his expression shift. Everything okay? Yeah, he said, putting the phone away. Just missing home. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Would you walk with me? There's a park across the street. I could use some fresh air after all this. They slipped out a side door, leaving the corporate world behind. The park was a small oasis in the city, with winding paths and early spring buds on the trees. Their footsteps crunched on the gravel path as they walked in comfortable silence. You know, Jack finally said, when I first pulled you from that car, I never imagined we'd end up here. Here in this park? Or here creating a foundation together? Either. Both. He stopped walking, turning to face her. Evelyn, what you're doing with the foundation, it's incredible. But I need to know where home is in all of this. For you. He met her eyes directly. Will you come back with me? Not to run programs or solve problems. Just come home. The city sounds faded away as they stood there, the question hanging between them. A gentle breeze rustled the emerging leaves above them, carrying the promise of spring and new beginnings. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Main Street as Jack's truck rolled into town. Evelyn sat in the passenger seat, her hands folded in her lap, watching familiar buildings pass by. Gone were the news vans and photographers that had crowded the streets weeks ago. Instead, she saw familiar faces offering genuine waves through shop windows. Mrs. Peterson, the librarian, stepped out onto the sidewalk and gave a warm smile. Mr. Garcia paused while sweeping the bakery entrance to tip his hat. These weren't the polite nods of strangers anymore, they were the greetings of neighbors. It feels different now, Evelyn said softly, returning the waves. Jack glanced at her, noting how she'd traded her corporate attire for jeans and a comfortable sweater. Good different? Real different, she replied, reaching over to squeeze his hand. They turned onto Cedar Lane, where Jack's modest two-story house stood with its weather-worn porch and newly painted shutters. Before Jack could cut the engine, the front door burst open. Mia exploded out of the house like a tiny rocket, followed by a laughing Cora who'd been watching her. "You're back!" Mia shouted, running full speed toward the truck. Her braids bounced behind her, and her face was lit up with pure joy. Evelyn barely had time to step out before Mia crashed into her, wrapping small arms around her waist. The force of the hug made Evelyn stumble back slightly, but she caught herself and knelt down to properly embrace the little girl. "I missed you so much," Mia said into Evelyn's shoulder. "Did you miss us? Are you staying?" "Daddy fixed your favorite chair on the porch." Evelyn laughed, tears pricking at her eyes. "I missed you more than all the stars in the sky," she said, pulling back to look at Mia's face. "And yes, I'm staying if that's okay with you." "Finally!" Mia exclaimed, grabbing Evelyn's hand and tugging her toward the house. "Come see what I did to my room, and I learned a new song on the piano, and I wrote a story about a princess who drives a race car." "Whoa there, speedster," Jack called out, grabbing their bags from the truck. "Let Eve catch her breath first." Cora approached, giving Evelyn a warm hug. "Welcome home," she said simply, but her eyes conveyed much more. "The guest room is all set up, and I stocked the fridge. There's lasagna keeping warm in the oven." "Cora, you didn't have to," Evelyn started. "Yes, I did," Cora interrupted with a knowing smile. "Because that's what family does." She turned to Jack. "Tommy and the guys want to know if you're still on for poker night tomorrow. They said to bring Eve, apparently. She promised to teach them about corporate negotiation tactics." Jack raised an eyebrow at Evelyn, who shrugged innocently. "What?" "Your veteran friends are surprisingly interested in business strategy." They all headed inside, where the house felt warmer and more alive than ever. Mia's artwork decorated the walls, including a new drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands, one tall with short hair, one with long hair wearing a crown, and a small figure in the middle with pigtails. "That's us," Mia explained proudly when she caught Evelyn looking at it. "I made it last week when Daddy said you were coming home." Evelyn touched the drawing gently. "It's perfect," she whispered. After Cora left and they'd enjoyed her homemade lasagna, the evening settled into a comfortable rhythm. Mia insisted on showing Evelyn every new thing that had happened in her absence, from the tooth she'd lost to the Valentine's Day cards she'd saved to show her. As the sky darkened, Jack made hot chocolate with mini marshmallows, the only proper way, according to Mia. They took their mugs out to the porch, where, sure enough, Jack had fixed up the old rocking chair Evelyn had always favored during her visits. The air was crisp with early spring chill, but they were warm in their coats as they settled into their seats. Mia wedged herself between them on the porch swing, clutching her hot chocolate carefully. "Look!" she suddenly exclaimed, pointing upward. "Snow!" Tiny flakes had begun to drift down from the darkening sky, dancing in the porch light. It was unseasonable for this time of year, a last whisper of winter before spring took hold. Evelyn tilted her face up, feeling the cool touch of snowflakes on her cheeks. Here, watching the snow fall with Jack and Mia beside her, she felt something settle in her soul. The constant buzz of corporate life, the weight of public scrutiny, the lonely echoes of her penthouse apartment, all of it felt distant and unimportant. Mia snuggled closer between them, her head resting against Evelyn's arm. "I like when we're all together," she said simply, "the way only children can." Jack reached across the back of the swing, his hand finding Evelyn's shoulder. She leaned into his touch, and they sat there quietly, watching the snow fall in the gathering dusk. The porch swing creaked gently as they rocked, a sound as familiar and comforting as coming home. Spring had painted the town in vibrant colors, with cherry blossoms dotting Main Street and fresh flowers blooming in every garden. The newly constructed Veterans Wing gleamed in the morning sunlight, its red brick facade matching the original community center perfectly. A crowd had gathered for the dedication ceremony, their excited chatter filling the air. Jack stood near the entrance, tugging at his tie. He wasn't used to wearing one, but Cora had insisted this was a tie occasion. Tommy wheeled up beside him, his decorated service cap perched proudly on his head. "Looking sharp, Connolly," Tommy grinned. "Never thought I'd see you cleaned up like this." "Yeah, well, don't get used to it," Jack replied, but he was smiling too. The new wing represented something bigger than himself, a chance for veterans like Tommy to get the support they deserved. Evelyn emerged from the building, elegant in a simple navy dress. She'd scaled back her corporate responsibilities to focus on the foundation, and the change showed in her relaxed demeanor. She caught Jack's eye and walked over, straightening his tie with practiced ease. "Ready?" she asked softly. "Born ready," he answered, covering her hand with his. The mayor stepped up to the podium, clearing his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're gathered here today to celebrate more than just a building. We're here to honor our veterans and recognize two people who've shown us what community really means." The crowd applauded as Jack and Evelyn moved toward the ribbon. Mia stood front and center, beaming up at them while holding onto Cora's hand. "The Hartwell Connolly Veterans Support Center," the mayor continued, "will provide counseling, job training, and a place of belonging for our servicemen and women. But more than that, it stands as a testament to how love can transform a community." Jack felt Evelyn squeeze his hand. They both knew the journey that had led them here, from a fiery crash on a winter night to this moment of shared purpose. "Miss Eve, Daddy," Mia called out, waving excitedly. "Cut the ribbon." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Together, Jack and Evelyn lifted the ceremonial scissors. With a clean snip, the red ribbon fluttered to the ground, and cheers erupted from the gathered townspeople. Tommy led a group of veterans in a salute, their faces proud and grateful. Mrs. Peterson wiped tears from her eyes, while Mr. Garcia distributed fresh pastries he'd made for the occasion. The town had come together, not just to celebrate a new building, but to embrace the change that had transformed them all. Inside, the facility sparkled with newness. A wall of windows filled the space with natural light, while comfortable seating areas invited conversation and connection. Photos of local veterans lined one wall, a tribute to service that Jack had helped arrange. As people filtered through the building, sharing stories and appreciation, Evelyn found herself drawn to a quiet corner. A bronze plaque caught her eye, and she read the inscription, "Dedicated to those who serve, and to the power of second chances, in memory of Sarah Connolly and William Hartwell." Her breath caught. Jack appeared beside her, his hand finding the small of her back. "I hope it's okay," he said softly. "I wanted to honor them both, your brother and Sarah. They're part of what brought us here." Evelyn leaned into him, emotion thick in her throat. "It's perfect," she managed. The afternoon passed in a blur of handshakes, hugs, and heartfelt thanks. Veterans shared their stories, community members offered support, and children like Mia darted between the adults, adding life and laughter to the celebration. As the sun began to set, the crowd thinned. Cora offered to take Mia for ice cream, giving Jack and Evelyn a knowing look as she ushered her niece away. "Walk me home?" Evelyn asked Jack, slipping her hand into his. They strolled through the quiet streets, the evening air sweet with spring blossoms. When they reached Jack's house, their house now, really, though they hadn't made it official, he led her to the porch. The old rocking chair creaked welcomingly as Evelyn sat down. "Remember our first real talk here?" Jack asked, leaning against the railing. "How could I forget? I was trying so hard to be just Eve, not Evelyn Hartwell." "You were always both," Jack said, "and I fell in love with all of you." He moved to stand in front of her, and something in his expression made Evelyn's heart skip. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered himself to one knee. "Eve," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, "that night on the highway, I thought I was saving you, but you saved me right back. You showed me how to live again, how to trust love again." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple but elegant ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Evelyn's cheeks as she looked at this man, this wonderful, honest, loving man who had changed her world completely. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she pulled him up into a kiss. They were both laughing and crying at once, holding each other close as the evening settled around them. A delighted squeal broke the moment. They turned to see Mia running up the path, ice cream forgotten, with Cora trying to catch up behind her. "Did you ask her? Did she say yes?" Mia demanded, bouncing with excitement. "Come see for yourself," Evelyn said, holding out her hand. Mia launched herself onto the porch and into their arms, creating a group hug that felt like everything right in the world. She examined the ring with serious appreciation before declaring, "Now you'll really be my new mommy." The afternoon sun bathed the town park in golden light as children darted between picnic blankets and folding chairs. Colorful balloons tied to park benches swayed in the gentle spring breeze, and the aroma of grilled burgers and Mrs. Garcia's famous empanadas filled the air. Jack stood at the grill, expertly flipping burgers while Tommy kept him company, sharing stories that made both men laugh. Evelyn moved through the crowd with natural grace, her engagement ring catching the sunlight as she helped arrange desserts on the buffet table. She'd traded her usual business attire for a flowing sundress, and her hair was pulled back in a casual braid. Several times, she caught herself pausing just to take in the scene, this beautiful, unexpected life she'd found. "Need any help with those pies, Miss Eve?" Mia called out, skipping over with a handful of wildflowers she'd picked. "I'd love some, sweetheart," Evelyn replied, accepting the flowers with a warm smile. "These are beautiful. Should we put them on the tables?" Mia nodded enthusiastically, and together they arranged the flowers in mason jars, creating simple but charming centerpieces. The girl's artistic eye surprised Evelyn once again. She knew exactly which colors complemented each other. Cora approached with a knowing smile, carrying a tray of her famous lemonade. "You two look thick as thieves over here," she observed, setting down the tray. "I haven't seen my brother this happy in years, you know." Evelyn felt her cheeks warm. "He's made me happier than I ever thought possible," she admitted quietly. The local band, set up under a sprawling oak tree, struck up a cheerful tune. Several couples moved to the makeshift dance area, their laughter mixing with the music. Mr. Peterson, the town's oldest resident, was teaching his great-granddaughter the box step, while his wife recorded the moment on her phone. Tommy wheeled over to the dessert table, eyeing the array of pies. "Jack's about done with the burgers," he announced. "Man's got a gift with that grill, I'll give him that." "High praise coming from you," Evelyn teased, already familiar with Tommy's usual cooking critiques. "Yeah? Well, don't let it go to his head." Tommy grinned, accepting the plate Mia offered him. The afternoon flowed with an easy rhythm. People came and went between the food tables and various activities. Some of the veterans Jack worked with had set up a horseshoe tournament, while others gathered to share stories and catch up. The Foundation's launch had already started making a difference, with several veterans enrolled in job training programs and others finding support through counseling services. Jack stepped away from the grill, wiping his hands on a towel, and made his way to where Evelyn stood. Without a word, he slipped an arm around her waist and pressed a kiss to her temple. "Everything okay?" she asked, leaning into him. "Perfect," he replied, watching as Mia joined a group of children playing tag. "You know, I never thought I'd have this again. A family, a future worth looking forward to." Evelyn turned in his arms to face him. "Neither did I. I was so lost in my corporate world, thinking success meant being alone at the top. Then you pulled me from that car, and everything changed." The band shifted to a slower song, and Jack held out his hand. "May I have this dance, future Mrs. Connolly?" Evelyn's laugh was bright and free as she took his hand. They swayed together under the afternoon sun, ignoring the knowing smiles from their neighbors. This was their moment, their celebration of finding each other against all odds. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, the party began to wind down. Families packed up blankets and leftovers, exchanging hugs and promises to get together soon. The band played their final song, a gentle melody that floated on the evening air. Jack sat on a bench near the edge of the park, taking in the peaceful scene. Evelyn and Mia had wandered to a patch of grass where fireflies were beginning to emerge. He watched as they tried to catch the glowing insects, their giggles carrying across the quiet park. Mia's hair had come loose from its ribbons, and Evelyn's braid was slightly undone, but they looked perfect to him. Two pieces of his heart he never knew he was missing. The first stars appeared in the darkening sky, twinkling like distant diamonds. Evelyn noticed him watching and waved, beckoning him to join them. As he walked over, Mia caught a firefly and carefully showed it to Evelyn before letting it go. "Look, Daddy," Mia called out. "The fireflies are dancing with the stars." Jack reached them just as another firefly lit up between them. Evelyn's eyes met his, full of love and contentment, and he felt the truth of the moment deep in his soul. "I thought I saved her life that night," he whispered to himself, watching Evelyn teach Mia how to catch fireflies without hurting them. "But the truth is, she saved mine." Standing together in the gathering dusk, they held hands, Jack, Evelyn, and Mia, finally whole beneath the star-filled sky. If you enjoyed the story, I hand-picked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.